Okay, good evening, everyone. I would like to call the special council meeting of September 18th to order, please. And council, we do have some changes that we need to make to tonight's agenda. So, first off, we do have some new business as well as supplementary information. So we will be adding in a 9.2, which is a library update, and also an 8.2 for seasonal adornments. You'll see the additional information in the yellow pages. And then also after, it's kind of right in front of me. Supplementary information, we have item number 4.3 for Tree Canada Day. We have item number 7.4, bylaw number 683, zoning amendment bylaw. And then we would also move number 6.1, the public hearing for 2151 Almond Road, to be moved immediately following approval of the agenda. And then 8.1, options for washrooms in Sooke, will be moved to follow the public question and comment period. So if I could add, and there's also a heading change in items number 7.3. It's just a report header. It says Arranwood Road. It should be Arranwood Drive. And then 7.4 Churchill Road is also Churchill Drive. And everything else, it's completely correct. It's just in these two items it was incorrect. So I just wanted to make that. So council, please, if you could consider passing a motion to approve the agenda with all these amendments. Moved by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried, and welcome Councillor Pearson. Okay, so then that brings us to the public hearing and related bylaw 6.1, bylaw number 681, zoning amendment bylaw for 2151 Almond. And I believe we have a staff report for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just give me a second here. The technology gets me sometimes.
Just while you're getting that ready, Councillor Parkinson has a question.
Through you, Your Worship. So what if people from the audience have something to speak to about this item and there's no opportunity for them to speak yet?
The public hearing will have the public hearing comment period from members of the public.
Okay.
Built into it anyways, so there is that opportunity available specifically for this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just go through the report summary with regards to the application. The purpose of this application is to rezone the property located at 2151 Almond Place from residential RU4 to rural RU2 to allow for construction of an additional single-family additional dwelling for a family member. The property is approximately 5.5 hectares and is not located in the sewer specified area. The surrounding uses around 2151 Almond Place include Almond Park to the north, CRD-owned right-of-way to the east, and rural residential to the south and west. There is a single-family dwelling and a small cottage existing on the property. The subject property is one of the largest properties left in the area, as many of the surrounding lots were subdivided based on the 1 hectare minimum lot size in the RU4 zone. The immediate surrounding properties are 1.8 hectares or less in size. The owners wish to construct a second single-family dwelling home with a suite on the property for family members. The proposed RU2 zone allows this to occur but will not allow for further subdivision to proceed under the existing zone. Based on the size of parcel size of 5.5 hectares, the property could have up to 4 single-family dwellings in the proposed RU2 zone, whereas the RU4 zone permits 1 single-family dwelling on a lot regardless of its size. I'll leave it at that as a summary, and if there's any further questions, I'd be more than happy to reply to them.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from members of council? Okay, seeing none, then I'll move into the public hearing. Before I do, I just have this statement to be read. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. Copies of written submissions received to date are available. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. For those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, please commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and home address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. Please note that this hearing forms part of tonight's special council meeting of council, and as such is being video recorded. Videos and their contents, including any personal information disclosed during the public hearing, will be posted on the district's website. So on that note, I'd like to welcome any member of the public forward to speak on this. It's 2151 Almond Place. And sir, when you take a seat, if you could please just turn on the microphone. It's just the one button there. You bet. Yep, thank you.
My name is Joel McCarty, and I am the owner of the adjacent property, which is 2145 Almond Place. And I've looked over this, and I just wanted to let council know that I'm in full support of this. And that is really the only reason I came here. That's it. Turn it off?
Thank you, Mr. McCarty. No, yes, please, thank you.
Unless you have any questions. I don't.
It's very straightforward. We appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak on 2151 Almond? Call for a second time on 2151 Almond. And a third and final time for 2151 Almond. Okay. So on that note, I'll consider the public hearing closed and turn back to council, please. Move third reading by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any further discussion on third reading? See none. All those in favor of third? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you, everyone. So then that puts us into our delegation section. So we have 3 delegations tonight, and each delegation will be allotted 5 minutes. There is a timer in front of you that you'll see counting down, so please stay within your time. And we will begin this evening with 4.1, Park Dedication for Viewpoint Estates. We have Mr. Jared Steingard, if I've said that pronounced. Okay, thank you and welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council and staff. I'm here representing the developers of the Viewpoint Estates property that's sort of located in the Grant Road neighborhood by Winfield Drive and Rund Road. My client, Michael Volk, was unable to attend tonight. He asked me to attend on his behalf, and there's sort of a unique opportunity here. The first phase recently got completed, and 23 lots were registered. There's some park dedication that happened, and the figure up on the screen there shows the area in green that has already been dedicated. Through the building process, the builder who is building on Lot 1 or Lot A there, which is sort of in the center of the screen, had some excess land. He was building a duplex, and there's some additional yard area that he didn't quite need. It's a very large lot, and got into a discussion with Michael Volk, and the development company said, you know, we'd be willing to buy this excess land off of you and dedicate it back as a park. We have engaged staff and tried to see what the process would be. It's a very uncommon situation to be dedicating park back to a municipality. Staff said, well, really, this is a council decision, hence the delegation. There is some urgency in a decision, yes or no, because the property will be stratified soon and the opportunity to realize in this park will be lost. We believe it's could be a unique amenity for the property or the community as a whole, because this area is fairly rolling with the terrain, and there will be a lot of park dedicated with the overall development through the different phases, but this is a spot that's flat. It's approximately 200 square meters or 2,100 square feet, and could be used for a dog park or just an open space to let kids run around in. It's located behind a mailbox pad, and seems to fit well with having a little bit of open space contiguous with the park that's already been dedicated. So, I'd like to open it up for any questions, should you have questions. But truly, what we're seeking is, does the District of Sooke want this as park? And if they do, we'll need some direction to move forward with that quickly. Or if Mayor and Council decide you don't want this as park, then we'll take that direction as well.
Okay, thank you very much for attending this evening. So in this case, it is just a section of land for park, so it wouldn't be landscaped or fenced or anything like that. It's just to dedicate this for park.
The intention would be any large rocks or debris would be removed.
Okay.
The material there would be hydro-seeded so that some grass could grow, and a cedar hedge would be planted between the residential property to the south and the property to the south would maintain and irrigate that cedar hedge. So we'd like to turn it over in as a complete and developed manner possible, not to give you a burden or something that right away you have to hire machinery or people to work on.
I see. Okay. Questions from Council? Councillor Ray, please.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. So your delegation report here talks about possibly a dog park. And so I'm just wondering, the gentleman or the builder that turned the land over to you, was he aware or she aware that that could possibly be a dog park next to the building that they were?
It was discussed. I should clarify, no land has changed hands yet. You'd have to receive, and we'd have to go through that process if you wanted it. But they have been discussing it could be a dog park, it could be an open space. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Casper?
I don't have a question. I'll just move I'll move a motion that the district accept the land dedication as outlined in red, as per the submission by Viewpoint Estates.
Second.
Okay, that's moved in second. Go ahead,
And if
Councillor
I could just
Casper.
speak to it,
Yeah.
really, there should be no preconceived ideas that this is going to be or not going to be a dog park, because that's entirely up to council to go through a public process as we've embarked upon regarding other properties. So, I don't think that we should approach this with a specific use. I'm in favor of supporting the applicant in their donation.
Okay, that's good. Other questions or comments on the motion? All right, we'll call the question then. All those in favor, oppose, unopposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Okay, next up we have item 4.2, a business license request, a delegation from Sean Driver and Donna Gray. If you could just turn on the microphone, please. Thank you.
Okay. I've handed out a printout earlier, so you should all have a copy.
Yes.
So basically, I'm just asking for a business license. I've listed the reasons there.
So I guess my question is, how come you haven't had one before?
If you look in the letters I've enclosed, the documents, in 2008, I got in the mail a request to get a business license and come up to town hall to buy one, and was sent home and basically said, you're legal non-conforming, we can't sell you one. And it's come to the point now where it's actually affecting my operations, and has been for quite some time, to the point now where the underwriter for a Garage Policy Act is asking for it. And for different wholesalers, when you set up an account, you can't give them a business license, you sort of look like some backyard guy, you know, you can't, it doesn't look very business manner when you can't give them a business license to operate when they request it.
And so I see in the materials that you've provided, and thank you for bringing them, it's just showing us year over year how your different classifications have been as either light industrial, business class.
Yeah, we got pushed into the light industrial in 2014 and 15, and our tax is pretty well tripled.
Okay.
So I called BC Assessment on 2 different occasions. They come out to the property and said it was there was no reason for that. Even in Victoria and other municipalities, welding, fabricating shops, and what we're doing down there is only commercial zoning. Mm-hmm. But so we're paying commercial tax and we were light industrial for 2 years until I got it changed to business commercial and lowered a little bit. But we still, nothing's changed. We just need a business license to, mostly for accounts, suppliers, and for insurance reasons.
Okay.
Like for years, we've been doing frame repairs on vehicles for all the automotive shops in town, and because we're certified and qualified to do that, and sort of been doing it in a gray area without a garage policy, and it's getting to the point now where it's making me nervous. You know, it's just not the way to do business this day and age.
Okay, so it was back in the day you were advised that you're illegal.
It was
legal non-conforming?
Because we've been doing it prior to Sooke being incorporated.
I see.
And at that time, I went through the bylaws or the rules, and it said that you couldn't have a home-based welding business as a home-based business. That's how it was explained to me.
Okay.
So they wouldn't sell me a business license in 2008. So I got the, well, here's the letter I copied that mailed to me.
And it was, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay.
And then, you know, we do work for the town, right? And the fire hall and the community association and a lot of charity events. Try and help out the high school and just different things around town, always have. But,
is any of your lands in the agricultural land reserve?
No.
Okay, I was just wondering if that might have been some
not
reason there. Okay. Okay. Questions or comments?
Just one last thing.
Yep.
So I put it in there how my insurance agents have asked to have the business license worded. Where is it? Yeah, fabrication and welding repairs, automotive repairs and sales. He told me that's how it should be worded, just for their sake. That's for the Garage Policy Act and for my liability reasons.
That's from the insurance company?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, questions? Councillor Pearson.
Yes. So I'm looking through the paperwork here. Clearly on the assessments for the last 4 years, I see light industrial, business, other, business, other, business, other. So obviously the assessment, and we're collecting taxes based on a business being on the property, so I would make a motion that we issue a business license to the applicant.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Do you want to add anything further, Councillor Pearson, in speaking to the motion at all? No? Good. Councillor Parkinson?
No, good.
Okay. Councillor Casper, on the motion, please.
Yeah, I just hope that the license is issued as per the request by the applicant and the list of activities as outlined by the insurance company request. You know, I think that's critical. There's no point in issuing a license if it doesn't address what is required.
Right.
So I hope that's clearly understood. That's why I'm going to support the motion, that it's clearly understood that the license is issued on the activities that are occurring on the property and as what's outlined in what the insurance company's requests are.
Okay.
Good. Okay, Councillor Parkinson, then Ray.
Through you, Your Worship, I'm of the mind too that when we have businesses working in town and the district does business with them, that they should all carry a license so that we support the people that support us. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ray, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So a question, just so that I can, so you were operating the business, then the District of Sooke Incorporated, and so are you zoned by the district, or is that when you talk about the bylaws keep changing so that you were out of sync with what the zoning was?
No, since I've been on the property and then Sooke become a district incorporated, there's been a lot of bylaw changes, and that's when it was brought to my attention in 2008 when I got this letter about, I tried to come up and buy a business license then.
Did you have, there wasn't a need for a business license before then?
Well, I've always wanted one,
Okay.
You should have one. You're
Okay.
working in town, everybody else has one.
Right, but as a regional district, that's before my time, so I
Yeah,
don't know if they didn't have them then.
If I may, Councillor
Okay.
Ray, I think it was around that time that the district started the business licenses,
correct.
so they didn't exist previously.
That's correct.
And there has been some queries to us about eliminating business licenses altogether, but we could see even from your situation how it is needed, and I think other businesses do require the licenses for, we've heard, for banking, for exporting, for a number of reasons, and yours also confirms that as well. So I appreciate the insight that you've provided to us with the materials.
Okay.
We can maybe look, this is a different conversation about simplifying the process, but I appreciate you raising this with us. I'll support the motion as well. I think you can even see from the notice of assessment, like, it's fairly straightforward. And then also the insurance needs is outlined by Councillor Casper, so I think it's fine. To our CAO, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. If the motion can include wording such that Council recognizes that is illegal non-conforming use of the land, that would be most appropriate to provide direction to staff. And the second point is whenever we have legal non-conforming, we as staff have to follow our bylaws, and so that's why we put these individual cases in front of Mayor and Council, because we can't pick and choose which laws we apply and which ones we don't. Of course, Mayor and Council can, so this is why this one's in front, and I'm sure that it won't be the last one.
Okay, so you're suggesting that after the words limited, to make that a comma, as such is a legal non-conforming business? Yes. Okay, is someone prepared to move that amendment? Okay. Councillor Casper?
Well, I think in order to address those other legal non-conforming businesses, then there should be another motion after, if this one is approved, that would deal with that issue, so that Council gives clear direction that if there are legal non-conforming businesses operating in Sooke, that business licenses shall be issued, period. Because this is the second time that this has occurred. There was one on Sooke Road, the small little building there, and believe me, that was like almost a 2.5-3 year process for the issuance of a business license there. Then it was finally done. And I think after that experience, we don't want that experience anymore. At least that's my sense around this table. So, if we can make it simpler and still issue licenses, and if they're truly recognized as legal non-conforming, then there should be no ifs, ands, or buts. Staff will get clear direction from this point forward, so we don't have to go through this exercise.
Okay, so we'll take out that amendment and just leave it as it was originally. It'll just say Driver Enterprises Limited, period. Okay, so we'll leave it as that, and I'd like anything further from Council on the motion as it is. All those in favor?
Sorry. Before we vote,
Councillor Ray?
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship. I would rather those be two separate.
They are
motions,
two separate.
But you're asking to vote on the motion.
On the first one that
Oh,
we've
on the
already
first
moved
one.
and seconded,
Okay.
the amendment didn't get moved or seconded, so it's back to the original.
Not enough space.
Okay.
So we're still on the motion that's been moved and seconded. Okay? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Driver, and just have your paperwork to the district and your fee, and we'll get you your license.
How long does it usually take to acquire that?
A day? What, an hour? What? I don't know what the one means.
Yeah, through your worship to Mr. Driver, staff can issue the license within a day. So if you're in tomorrow with your paperwork, then we can make sure you have a license.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all for your
Thank you
time.
very much.
You bet.
Okay, so now this brings us to the second point that Councillor Casper raised. Councillor Casper, is that the wording that you would like to see?
Sure. I would then move that council direct staff to issue business licenses to all legal, non-conforming businesses when such applications for licenses are made.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. Speaking to it, Councillor Casper?
Yeah, and that's to ensure that we're not just going to issue business licenses. They have to go through a process like everybody else.
Yep. Okay, anything further, Councillor Pearson, as a seconder? No? Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Well, I understand the intent is to keep people from having to go through the work of coming to council. I don't feel comfortable having it rest with staff. And the reason being is next year there will be a new council, and I think that this really puts staff in my belief, puts staff in an awkward predicament. If something goes sideways, then people will be pointing the fingers at the staff when it should be at the council table. So for me, I would rather these individuals on the one-off come before council, just as this gentleman has tonight, and then that decision rests with council and not with staff.
Okay. Further comments? Councillor Parkinson?
I'm in agreement with Councillor Ray. I would like to see it come before council and not have staff issuing the licenses on their own, so that we know which ones are non-conforming, so that we're aware of what's going on in town. Thank you.
Okay, so to our CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship, through two councillors, Pearson, Casper, and Parkinson. Each case is an individual case, and we do tend to get legal opinions on each individual case as to whether or not they qualify for legal nonconforming. And I must agree that it doesn't cause any undue delay or hardship for legal nonconforming businesses to come into chambers and to make their individual cases. I'm not comfortable as well with council, and I don't have a legal on this, but it could be considered fettering your discretion by having a blanket approval provided to staff. So my recommendation from staff to mayor and council is that we continue to come as a one-off basis.
Councillor Casper.
Well, I'm in favor of the motion because all legal non-conforming uses throughout British Columbia are protected by provincial legislation. It doesn't matter what a zoning bylaw says. If that business or activity was in existence and occurring prior to bylaws being implemented that actually made their operation legal non-conforming, it shall carry on in perpetuity. And in my view, we're not fettering our rights because these property owners are protected by provincial legislation. And I've always maintained that local government doesn't have the authority or power to take something away from somebody just because they decide to rezone their property. And it's all about property rights. And I'm a firm believer in that. I get tired of big government getting in the way and starting to dictate stuff to people. And I'm astounded by the fact that, since 2007, when the council of the day, and I was part of it, made the decision to get into the business license business and issue such, that this property was in fact denied getting one. So, I'm trying to clean up mess that's been here for decades. And we're going on 20 years as a municipality, and if we can do anything to fix the problems that we see on a regular basis, then I think our job is being done and we're well serving the community. So that's why I'm in support of that motion. And you know what? It does not fetter council's authority. And if council is going to get inundated from phone calls, hey, you phone them up and say, guess what? It's legal non-conforming. It's permitted. End of story. You got a complaint? Contact your MLA or the province. I think we have to recognize that people have rights. And, it's too bad that individuals in the past and even tonight have had to come and plead their case to us. To me, it should have just been straightforward, no ifs, ands, or buts. But, I'm only one vote here.
Thank you, Councillor Casper. Councillor Loggins, pardon me.
Thank you. I think this happens when we have motions on the fly that are important, but we don't have any information or thought put to them. I don't feel comfortable voting on this motion without having a bit more information, without speaking with staff, and perhaps even having a report if that's necessary. So I would like to defer this to the next council meeting if that's possible.
Okay, so for myself, I'm comfortable with the motion, and I say that, I appreciate what's being said by members of council and the hesitancy, but within our community, we have a large number of businesses that are operating without a license and have no intention of getting one whatsoever. They're serving the public, they have people in and out of their doors every day, and they feel that they're not going to get a license, and we don't really have a mechanism to enforce. So when you actually do have a business that brings all of their information in, and as such is entering into a public domain, and then there's reasons as outlined by others, I just feel that it's something that can be done administratively by staff. If there's an issue, it can be raised to council. We could get an update even. We see it in our annual report, how many business licenses year after year and how that's growing and changing and how the business are changing. So it's all there. The materials are available. So for myself, I'm comfortable supporting the motion, and I think if there's any strange items, they can come forward from staff via a proper report if needed. If staff's not comfortable issuing it for whatever reason, they can still bring it forward to council. Receiving a report, we've seen how many motions we've put forward in front of staff and how many we continue to do so. It's just going to delay it out. So I appreciate where everyone is going with this, but I just think when we have so many businesses actively doing business with the public with no interest in getting a license, I don't want to go out and penalize those that actually do try to get one. So anyway, on the motion, Councillor Loggins, then Councillor Pearson.
And just to follow up to that comment, Your Worship, I'm just cognizant of the fact that 3 seem to be opposed and 3 are for the motion, so it would fail if we voted on it tonight. And it would be nice if we had some time to think about it and then perhaps wrap our heads around it. Because I'm not opposed necessarily to what's being proposed, but I am opposed to, I can't vote in favor of it without wrapping my head around it first and having more thought.
Make a motion to postpone it?
Yes, yeah. I'll make the motion to postpone it to the next, if possible, the next council meeting, but until we receive a report. There's no rush on this. We don't have a lineup of people, as I believe, coming. So.
Sorry, I don't have my microphone on. That did pass on a 5-2, and the motion as amended then is that council direct staff to issue business licenses to all legal non-conforming businesses when such applications for licenses are made, and that this motion be postponed until the next council meeting to receive a staff report. All right. I'll question on the motion as it's amended. All those in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed, Councillor Pearson and Councillor Casper are opposed. And, okay, we'll see this next council meeting. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. Okay, moving on to the next delegation, 4.3, Tree Canada Day from Kelly Keys and Scott Gertzma. Welcome.
To Mayor and Council, thanks for seeing me tonight. Tree Canada and Home Hardware Stores Limited over the past 25 years have planted close to 25,000 large caliper urban trees valued at more than $1.2 million. This is the first year that I have applied to participate and was selected as one of the 37 locations for the 2017 National Tree Plant. Sooke Home Hardware feels this is a good, tangible way for us to give back to the community that has supported us for over the past 25 years. National Tree Day falls on Wednesday, September the 27th of National Forest Week, running September 24th to the 30th. The day is celebrated across the country with tree dedications, plantings, workshops, and seminars. Last Thursday, Brian Druid, the Tree Canada rep for the island, met with Laura, Jessica, and I to go over the Ponds Park corridor area, and I think you have a map of that, or she's going to put a map up there, to discuss its suitability for large caliper trees. Brian believes it is a good location and that 10 to 12 trees will fit there nicely. Sooke Home Hardware, along with Tree Canada, would like to plant approximately 11 large caliper horse chestnut trees in the Ponds Corridor Park from Townsend to Church Road. We feel that this would be a good location as it is central in Sooke, enjoyed by many, and will complete a planting that was started by a developer years ago. To celebrate Canada 150 and as a green initiative, I have invited the Sparks and Pathfinders of the Girl Guide organization to participate for a badge opportunity and to have children involved. A tentative time of 4 o'clock on the Wednesday the 27th is presently planned but can be finalized after this meeting tonight. I'm hoping that Mayor and Council, along with the district, will be supportive and willing to participate as well.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great. Congratulations, and thank you very much for putting Home Hardware forward and for taking the initiative to do that.
And it's not uncommon for them to do it year after year for a couple of years' time if there's other projects around.
That's good to know. Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. Next Wednesday, unfortunately, I think almost all of Council will be away attending the UBCM, but Councillor Ray, perhaps, if she's available, would be able to attend. Okay. And that's why she's not going to UBCM. So unfortunately, we'll see how the motion is, but for that reason would not be able to attend. But I'm glad that you have the Girl Scouts or Girl Guides and the like available because it is a good badge opportunity.
Tree Canada has supplied $2,200 to purchase of the trees, but that money is to be used just for the trees. Laura has suggested I ask Mayor and Council if there'd be some money available for the digging of the holes or maybe the bark mulch and stuff like that, but I feel that if you can't be supportive in that manner, I can still get it done.
Okay. How large would the trees be when they're planted?
Jessica was looking into that. I don't have that number here.
Okay.
6 feet or above.
Oh, that's
sure.
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Pearson, then Rays, please.
Yes. Thank you for your presentation tonight. I will be supporting it, and I think you've chosen an excellent location because that's kind of a barren landscape through there, so very, very cool, and thank you for that. I would make a motion that we participate, but I have a question through the mayor to the staff. Do we have availability with our Public Works Department to assist digging holes and planting trees?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson, we don't have a machine to dig a hole, but we can certainly do a contract with someone to help us out. We're projecting about $1,500 to $2,000 worth of machine time.
Okay, so
I'll make a motion that we support this initiative by Home Hardware and appreciate them, and to include a small fee or something that we could get from council contingency. I don't know if we have got council contingency. Do we have anything left in that? Through the chair.
Let's get a seconder for the motion. Seconded. So we're looking at, say, $2,000?
Through you to the finance director. Do we have a place where we can get that money?
I guess through your worship to Councillor Pearson, report you're going to be seeing in a bit actually discusses the council contingency that's left, and there is enough left based on
the Parks Fund, or is there a more appropriate place?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson, there is we do have money in the overall landscape budget or the environment budget. I would have preferred it to come out of council contingency, but if
of course you would.
if need be, we can deal with it.
Thank you. So,
Okay.
Because I would change my motion to come out of the parks budget.
It is a public
Because
park.
it is active. Thank you.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Are both Councillor Ray and Councillor Pearson content with the parks budget? Anything further on the motion? If we could have a staff member in council's absence attend the event, we'd greatly appreciate that. It's just everyone is away. Otherwise, we'd love to be there. Councillor Ray?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. So is that everything that you need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
I just wanted, because it is, we're doing something sort of like on the fly, so
Yeah.
I want to make sure we got it all.
No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Councillor Parkinson?
Through you, Your Worship, is that date set, or can it be the
It's not
following
set.
week?
It's supposed to be the week of National Forest, so anywhere from that Sunday to that Friday.
Okay, thank you.
And nothing's written in stone as of yet until after this.
Right. No,
So
we're
I
gone
could
for the
change
whole
the
week.
date. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You know that we support it.
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah,
we'll-
for sure.
Yeah.
Thank
Send
you.
us some pictures. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. Thank you very
Thank you very
much. And thank you, Home Hardware. Okay, so that will move us into the public question and comment period. So looking for comments from any member of the public, with the exception of the public hearing that we had earlier in this meeting, as that public hearing is closed. So it's on all other items. And if you could come forward, we just need your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Deborah Knight, and I live at 6596 Arranwood Drive. I'd like to direct you to my letter that's included in the supplemental agenda. And it's basically the criteria for Class 3 supportive housing is for a person who's previously homeless or at risk of homeless, have mental health issues, recovering from drug addictions, and experience other barriers to housing. Macola Housing's mission statement to provide affordable and appropriate homes primarily for Aboriginal people of Vancouver Island. I've been trying to get my son into the Hope Centre for the past 5 years. My son has a status, he's a status Indian, has mental health issues, and experiences other barriers to housing. He meets the criteria, or so I thought. I was advised by Kevin Albers, CEO of Macola Housing, that my son doesn't meet the annual income criteria, which is between $24,600 and $69,360. In Sooke, they do not offer any supports, and Macola is operating solely as a landlord. The building is not supportive housing and is governed by the Residential Tenancy Act. And basically, the 24/6, if a person worked at minimum wage for 8 hours a day, they wouldn't quite meet that criteria. So my son and I viewed a bachelor suite at the Hope Centre. The rent was $610 per month, which is very similar to a bachelor suite at Grant Manor. I would like to ask Council for their support in not granting a permissive tax exemption to the Hope Centre, Macola Housing, and I would like to request help with lobbying the provincial government to remove the Hope Centre from Class 3 supportive housing. No comments?
Thank you very much for coming this evening. Other members of the public or Councillor Casper has a question. Go ahead, Councillor Casper.
Yeah, so I'm really appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and I know it's a difficult thing to talk about publicly, for a lot of people. How long had you been going through this process?
I've been trying to get him into Macola Housing for 5 years, since he was 16.
5 years.
And actually he's 21 now, so I started really looking quite hard around 18 to get him up.
Right, and so 18 would probably be the proper age when he as an individual could go out and live on his own in that type of housing.
Yeah, it was actually 16, I guess I started
16.
going for other supports and stuff. for his mental health issues.
And you're saying there is zero support on site at that particular housing project?
I attached a letter
Yes.
from him, and basically he's saying there is no support.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Councillor Ray, sorry to have you up and down. Councillor Ray has a question as well. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Ray.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Ms. Knight. So did I hear you say that for a bachelor suite they wanted $610
Per month, yes.
per month? And in your experience in looking, I'm just wondering if that falls within the affordable housing rate. Like,
no, $610, if that's 30% of, they say housing should be 30% of your income.
Right.
So that takes them up to $24,600. But when you have a person with disabilities, they don't make $24,600. They make just slightly over $1,000 a month, which would make the rent affordable for them at $375. And we have nothing like that in Sooke.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are we done? Okay. Thank you and welcome.
Push the button. All right. Hi, Fran Dash 2387 French Road North. Councillor Pearson, I believe Works does have machinery to plant trees. It's called a Fox 2. A shovel. A shovel with a man on the end. And also, just clarification on the parkland. What was the size of that?
The earlier one, the one that was...
the first one with the proposal up at Mountain Maple Terrace View, whatever.
2,100 square feet.
2,100 square feet is nothing. It's twice the size of my house. It's not even considered a lot, never mind a park. And if it did become a dog park, it would be for chihuahuas. Hamsters. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dash. Small dogs. Other...
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Angela Hudson. I'm the Executive Director for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul for Vancouver Island, and I live at 646 Kenneth Street in Victoria. I just wanted to come and speak to the property tax exemption application that St. Vincent de Paul has put in, and just to let you know that we appreciate our society, all of the work that you have done with St. Vincent de Paul and the support that you've given us over the years. We have, it's outlined in the application, but we have formed a great relationship with the Salvation Army, who is in our space at our location in Sooke, and I'm really pleased to see that they're looking at expanding their hours to meet an ever-growing need for supporting the area. We are in the process of developing our support services in Sooke, and we do it through our home visit program, as many of you know. And so what we want to do is get a face out here. And so in our partnership with the Salvation Army, we have been able to do it jointly. So we offer free income tax programs. We offer hampers. We are not a food bank at that location, but we do offer emergency food hampers and a place for counseling and meetings as well. So our store has expanded to meet the need, which we're really pleased with, and our cost per item that we sell has stayed the same or gone down just a little bit. We've got a lot of donations coming in, so we're really pleased with that. We've increased the security on the outside of the building. Needed to happen for different reasons, but we do want to let you know that we're so appreciative, and we will continue to do what we've been doing and grow our program here.
That's great. Thank you, Ms. Hudson. I didn't know about that partnership with yourself and the Salvation Army or St. Vincent, and so that's great to hear, and thank you for providing that
You're very
within
welcome.
our community. Questions, Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, to Ms. Hudson. I sat on council last term. We were quite excited, I think, with the program and the housing coming in. My recollection, though, was it was to be more affordable for young First Nations individuals. And I looked up on the architect's notes, and it says that it will contain 25 suites of affordable housing for homeless Native youth. And so the question for me, because that was my recollection, is that it wasn't like $610 a month for a bachelor's suite. Seems a little bit out of affordable, unless you're making something like $24,000. So I'm concerned with the comments by Ms. Knight that was made this evening, because I'm not sure how homeless youth could be making over $25,000 a year. So that's part of my concern.
I really appreciate your question. I want to be very clear, though. Macola Housing is a separate legal entity, and it really is up to Kevin Albers, the CEO, and Macola to answer those questions. I'm here for our permissive tax exemption for St. Vincent de Paul, and it's a separate legal strata. So I don't really, although I could answer all your questions in my own way, it wouldn't be appropriate in this forum. I don't think.
My apologies. I got confused.
That's okay.
Because I thought, oh, you've come all the way in from Victoria to talk about the housings.
No. Is there any other questions for us?
No. Thank you, Ms. Hudson.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Other comments from members of the public?
I'm not sure if this is the time for me. My name is Christine McGuinness. Steps of the Future Childcare Society.
This would be the time.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Great. So what I would like to ask is if the decision on our tax exemption could be tabled to the next council meeting, because we just did find out Friday evening. I haven't been able to report to our board of directors, and also I haven't been able to find, I know we were supposed to be allowed 2 minutes to discuss our concerns, and I did go on the website today looking for Bylaw 338 and could not find it. We had a Pro-D day today, so I did not also have time to come into the district office today to get the information. And under Community Charter Section 224 2A, I could not find that on the District of Sooke website, so I spent some time before the Pro-D day today looking for this information. So I don't feel that we're prepared this evening to speak to that. I do have some concerns about the comments about business operation under Steps of the Future Childcare Society. Also, the council policy likely does not meet the legislation charitable or non-profit purpose, because we are an acting charitable society. We do a tax return, and we have a constitution and bylaws. We run an annual general meeting with our board of directors and all parents. So I'm not quite sure about the wording in some of the part of this agenda regarding our society. So I would like some more time to actually be able to speak to this.
Okay, what we can do, Ms. McGuinness, when we reach that section of the agenda in 7.5, like council has heard your comments about it this evening, and then we can take that into consideration and then look at deferring a decision at that time. Councillor Casper?
Yes, thank you. Okay, I have a question. Now, when the society and the organization Child Care Center was operating at the Seventh-day Adventist location,
yes,
were you assessed taxes there?
No, we were a rental group there. We didn't own it.
But you did occupy and you paid rent.
Yes.
But you were never assessed, and the BC Assessment Authority didn't come in and assess your operation, which hasn't changed from that time.
Right.
And I think you were there 10 years?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you were there 10 years. You never assessed taxes, and this was both before we incorporated and after we incorporated, correct?
Yes.
And everything is the same. The society is the same constitution and bylaws?
Yes.
So nothing has changed, and your purpose has not changed, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think this is important information that perhaps council, and since leaving that particular location, you have operated on school board properties.
Right.
In an old residence, correct?
Yes, for another.
And you also occupied within a school, correct?
Yes.
And you met all of their criteria as being a not-for-profit organization, correct?
Yes, Variety Club of Canada.
And I base that question on the comment I'm going to make now, is that it's my understanding that the school board does not just not rent their premises out on a long-term basis, especially internally during school hours, for-profit organizations. At least that's my understanding.
Right.
I've never heard of the Sooke School District doing that. So when it does come to a time, I'm going to be speaking in support of not including this particular property and situation in any proposed bylaw at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Casper, for that insight. Council may have some questions of you when the time comes up, since you have a bit of background, so if you can just sort of hang on to that. Thank you, Ms. McGuinness. Is there anything further? Okay, did you have a question? I'll be recognizing speakers, please. Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I was going to say, could we not defer this as requested so she doesn't have to stay through all of the information for the next hour and a half?
I hear your point, Councillor Parkinson, but there's others in the room that are also waiting, so we'll get through these materials, and we've had to speak, and we'll try to. It's up to council to get it all through in a timely manner, so hopefully we can do that. Councillor Ray, or not?
Yes, sorry, but it speaks to the deferment. I just am aware that there are some critical dates, and so that if we look at trying to defer something that may come in this, I just want to make sure that we can still meet the dates so that they don't lose out on the opportunity.
I believe it's October 31st.
Yes, but council has to sit and speak to it. So.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McGuinness. Other questions or comments from members of the public? Okay, seeing none, then we'll continue on with tonight's agenda. And that moves us, we did some shuffling, to 8.1. And this is options for washrooms in Sooke. And I will turn this, we do have a written report, and turn this over to staff, please. Item 8.1.
Then you can talk.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Your Worship and Councillors, my name is Paul Butterfield, one of the staff, so nice to meet you. I'm here to give a presentation for a staff report, options for washrooms in Sooke. First thing we did with looking at this was get well acquainted with the public washrooms here in Sooke. The bottom three in blue are the ones that are operated by the district, Pit Washroom at Whiff and Spit, and a couple of plumbed and powered washrooms at Ed McGregor and Broomhill Park. The other ones noted in green are operated by the CRD along the Galloping Goose Trail and in their parks. Before looking forward, we had to look through our Tempest database for issues in our washrooms, and you'll notice that there's been a slight difference between the pit-style washrooms, where it's just pit underneath, and the plumbed and powered ones with regarding issues that they've had. And I just kind of categorized them as the type of issue that we've had. What you can notice from that is that basically for every one issue of a pit toilet, there are 5 issues for a plumbed and powered toilet. So there's some history of what's gone back in the past. Looking at the options we have of what type of washroom that we could possibly get in Sooke, we have This is a type of pit toilet where we're given toilet paper and some hand sanitizer and a toilet. This is what it looks like. This is a photograph of a CRD-style pit toilet. Going forward, you can get into a plumbed and powered. So here we have a plumbed toilet. And with plumbing comes a sink. And with a sink comes plumbers needed for that. Some hand soap. Lighting. And when you have lighting and heating, you need electricians. And you have some paper towel that we offer in our washrooms. With that comes a garbage can. And of course, maintenance with taking that garbage away. Next is the automated public toilet, which tries to automate and anti-vandalize these types of systems. So you have a button to perhaps open the automatic door. You get seat sanitizer and cleaner on most of the units. You get sensors to wash your hands and with your water and drying them. You automate the toilet paper so that it comes out per square. And there are, on the bottom, these nozzles to spray the bottom of the toilet to wash away any substances or debris. It also comes with a communication unit that marks and logs how many uses and what was used in the toilet, and a control room, which usually is maintained by specialty crews that are trained in this type of new environment. So you offer a lot, but there's some complexities with that upper style. And in looking at kind of the costs of what this comes to, you can see this graph shows the pit toilet in blue and a large range of costs for the plumbed and powered. And essentially what's on the left is Broomhill and Ed McGregor. And what you get on the right-hand side is, I'll show you a photograph of when you try to design an anti-vandal perfect toilet that doesn't go into the automated section. And the black is really the automated toilets. This includes installation costs at these locations. And I'll just show you what they look like. This is a typical CRD pit toilet. This is Ed McGregor, our washroom facility, plumbed and powered. This is what you get when you try to design an anti-vandalized, very successful unit called the Portland Loo. And this is when you get the deluxe automated public toilet system, and it looks very wonderful. Essentially what we've done is broken it down into average costs. There's a low and a high, and we can see some disparities. There's a more detailed discussion when you look into the report about the maintenance requirements for each type, the sustainability of each type. The automated toilets have a lot of have more water use in them. I think it's and then gets into homelessness, and then the risks of these types of washrooms. Specifically looking and getting into what this means for the next public washroom in Sooke. This is location at John Phillips Park, with a potential location of a washroom facility located with a nice sight lines for SEPTED community visibility. And then if we were to hook it up to power and sewer, those would be the potential locations. And this is going to go. Here we go. This would be the estimated cost of each type of washroom facility at that specific location. So what we're talking here is a dual washroom, men's and women's, So for the pit-style toilet, it would cost approximately $30,000. That's no power, no sewer hookup necessary. The $105,000 is for a $50,000 unit similar to the Broomhill washroom facility, and $330,000 would be a dual automated public toilets. Running down the type of influences or factors for each type of washroom facility, we can see that the more desirable score is the full circle. So dark is good, and what comes out is a relative score between the pit, the plumbed, and the automated toilet facility.
So just a question on that screen, since you have it. What is meant by the cool factor?
Well, it's very attractive, the attractiveness of the unit.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was temperature.
What we're recommending, since we're here in front of council, is that the pit style of toilet be recommended for the John Phillips Park. With a review of the existing washrooms within the district and the costs, the available options, and the risks of automated washrooms in Canada and throughout the world, it is felt that the most desirable washroom type is a pit washroom with septic tank, much in the style of the CRDs along the Galloping Goose Regional Trail that looks something like this. Thank you.
Okay, questions from council. We've talked a bit about improvements to John Phillips Park for a while, and we received some information through trade shows at various conferences on sort of new and innovative technologies, and that's what triggered this report to come forward from staff, so thank you for putting it forward and for the background materials. Discussions on styles or types, or questions back to staff. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, the washrooms were discussed at the Parks Committee meetings for the past 2 years and what the designs were, and from that committee, the pit washrooms were not put forward as one of the ones that we would like to see. And for me personally, I would not like to see that in one of our nicest parks in Sooke. I was just at Ehlard Farm this weekend for a wedding, and they have the pit washrooms in there. And I was going to use the washroom. I walked in there, and I had to turn around and walk out. There was no way I was going in there. It was absolutely disgusting. So I cannot imagine having something like that in the center of our town. So I would not be in favor of this. Thank you.
Just a question to Councillor Parkinson. From the Parks Committee, what sort of other feedback did they have, and is it like between the second choice, to take the pit one out, the second and third, what sort of discussions were had there? Was it the case where running water is nice, like as a feature, or what sort of led the committee to make that decision at the time?
I do believe that the pit washrooms don't appear to be as cleanly as the other ones when they are cleaned up. So I think it was more along the lines of being able to go and use the washroom and actually having running water.
Yeah.
So that was one of the main features.
I mean, for myself, I think the pits are great when there is no other services available. Like the locations on the map there, when you note that the CRD has them in on regional trails, like they're up quite a ways on the Goose. They're convenient, but there's nothing to hook into. I don't believe that the water runs that far. So it is what it is. Like Harborview Park, there's something for convenience, but there's no water line running in there. Councillor Pearson?
Yes, through the chair. Just for discussion purposes, and I look at, John Phillips Memorial Park, and to the immediate left in this picture, we have a beautiful big building that we're in tonight. Is there any opportunities or synergies that we could put a public washroom in our formerly occupied space downstairs? I know we've used some of it, but I'm kind of thinking is that, if we're going to spend some kind of money in having locked doors, we were building a building, we've got a sewer system that's sitting right here, we've got all those things. Is there access to the public that that would be controlled by our building janitor, all of those things? I don't know. I mean, the building is a pretty big building, and we're talking about putting a pit washroom. I don't know. That's about 60 feet from there. I don't know. Kind of thing.
Back to staff. The area is completely occupied now by staff, but go ahead.
It's just a question. I mean, we have a big building, and I don't mean maybe booting people out of their office to change to a washroom or anything, but is there any other opportunities within our structure that we could look at?
Go ahead.
Because to me, we're at the very far edge of
Your mic.
Oh, sorry. We're at the very far edge of the park, and then we have this big, giant building right here. A concrete bunker around the back or something could be built for the price of that second one. I'm thinking to myself.
Over to staff.
I don't know, just a thought.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson, the area that was alluded to with regards to a potential having the public come in, we're fully utilizing that area right now, so the opportunity has been lost there. And I want to thank Paul for putting this report together, but I think the report was put together more or for council to get an appreciation of the costs, in particular with regards to the maintenance. Specifically, when we look at Ed McGregor Park with the problems that we have there, I mean, it's getting to the point where only having Ed McGregor washrooms open during some kind of function there, because the vandalism and people locking themselves inside, etc., is becoming so unruly. So we wanted you to get a really good feel for all the things that we go through out there. And I appreciate Councillor Parkinson's issue with regards to cleanliness, but I think as an entity, I think the district would take more pride in maintaining their facility if it was chosen to go that pit-type toilet. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Councillor Ray, then Casper.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I ride the Goose on a regular basis, and I've used those pit washrooms, and they're well cleaned, they're well maintained by the CRD. And I think that one of my concerns would be going to anything that's more expensive. We've realized on Lot A, with the homeless, the needles and the garbage and that stuff that we've found on that site, I'd be very concerned about putting $105,000 into a bathroom that gets destroyed on a regular basis. And I think that the simpler we keep it, the less likely we will be to have problems. So I have no problem with the pit. I recognize that an issue to that is keeping it clean, right? Thank you.
Councillor Casper.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I just threw you to staff. Was staff made aware, or was staff aware that when we came back from the FCM meeting that both yourself, myself, and Councillor Pearson was in attendance, we were given a verbal quote of $100,000 for a unit? Was any staff member aware of that? And if not, I'm surprised by the $130,000 quote, and then the other costs associated on top of that. Secondly, my other question relates to the servicing. Did anybody look at tapping into the sewer line that actually runs from the building here down through the John Phillips hookup, because that's where the sewer line was connected, and running power from this building to any new facility there, and calculate the costs there? And that's another one to consider, because I want options, especially when I'm making decisions. And because I'm going to talk about this only in the automated column, that there's no need in this day and age to have separate men's, women's facilities, because it's the norm and becoming the norm that you have unisex washroom facilities, especially when, in this case, they're fully automated and go through almost a 3-minute cleansing process before the next user, and they're sanitized. So that's another thing I wanted to mention. And from the maintenance costs column, just to remind council members, I think we had issued a contract to one of our previous suppliers for maintenance for our washroom facilities. And if I'm not, I stand to be corrected, I understand it was over $20,000 a year just to do maintenance that we'd contracted out for our washroom facilities, and that was all inclusive. And after saying that, I sort of look at a facility, if it has a 10 or 20 year life or lifespan, then I'm a tendency to forecast what are those costs by our paid staff. All up, we're probably with all our costs and benefits, probably over $40 an hour cost for staff to go and maintain something. So if we can find a way of reducing those costs, then I think that's a step forward. And the other thing is that if we did decide to do something like this down there, we would actually be living up to recommendations that were made by a fairly public, extensive parks consultation process that took place in January, February of 2016, and there were 3 key items that were recommended. One was additional trail. The second was benches and some facilities there. And then the third one was washrooms. And in 2016 in our budget, we had allocated funds, which actually could have led to the first phase of this, but somehow those funds were never utilized and almost, in my mind, just disappeared. And then we've done little or nothing since. So that's why both myself and the mayor brought the matter forward on handing over to the staff, here's what we saw at the FCM, and council had actually given some pretty clear direction, and I appreciate them coming in with the costs. But I think that maybe this thing should be rethought as to installing one unit, and if council wants to spend close to $200,000 on something, well then you know what I'd be doing? I'd be putting an automated washroom at $120,000, $125,000 down at the boat launch too, because that's probably the next thing that we're going to have to deal with, because there's all these users coming in off the water, and I'm sure, because I've been out in the water, when you return, nature calls. So, I think that this, before we make a decision, there should be a little more information brought forward, i.e. up-to-date quotes. I think either the mayor or myself follow up with the supplier, Urban Blue, as to what they told us verbally at the FCM on a price, and because they were quite adamant. They wanted to actually make a presence in British Columbia, and they were prepared to sharpen their pencil to do so, because it took them some time to install units in Alberta, and they worked on that, and now they're moving west to British Columbia. So I think, if we approach them in a different way and a follow-up from the FCM, that price may be reduced. And I really can't tell in this proposal, was this the bare bones minimum cost item, or was this the one with the wood trim or some other fancy stuff? Because I saw pictures which didn't come close to what we were shown and what we actually saw physically at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this and to either get some questions tonight or perhaps we could get some more information. Thank you.
Is there any response back from staff just on Councillor Casper's comments?
I did contact Urban Blue and got a written quote. One unit, I think, was their basic, I'll have to confirm that when I go back to the office, was $175,000 plus installation. And so I just quoted that the double was $275 plus installation.
Thank you. Other thoughts or comments from council on the washrooms? I think what we can do is move the first one, and that is that council receive the staff report options for washrooms in Sooke for information. Move Councillor Loggins to receive, and seconded by Councillor Ray. All those in favor of receipt? Opposed? None opposed. And so secondly, perhaps what we can do now that we have this sort of base information is Councillor Casper and I can talk and contact and just find out what's gone on with the pricing, and we can get more information back to council. I think more opportunity to talk with park users. I think it's something that we have, it's been talked about for a while, and then even when there were plans to do various things in John Phillips Park, whether it was the horseshoes or the bike park, the dog park, or whatever, it always came back to comments that you don't even have a washroom there, so how can you possibly do all these other things if there's no washroom? So we need to get on with it. I agree with Councillor Casper. We did hear differently, so maybe a bit of clarity as to what happened there. I'm still not convinced one washroom fits all, but again, the traffic moves through John Phillips, so unless there's an event and an event brings in additional washrooms, would there be a lineup because people are moving through the park, right? So it's just some place to stop. It is something we hear from visitors to the area. I know that vandalism is a problem, but I don't think that should be a reason to not do something when the rest of the public that's out and about recreating needs facilities in the area. I think it's pretty important. So unless council wants to make a decision on any of those other items, which of course you're welcome to do so, or we can get more information. So I'll just leave it up to what council would like to do. Councillor Casper?
Well, I would like to echo the comments that Councillor Parkinson made in regard to pit toilets. I honestly don't think that would bode well in this community. And the reason why is because of the close proximity of our sewer system and the fact that this property is connected to the sewer. And really, I don't think there's any excuse in this day and age not to have something that's hooked up to the sewer. You know, it just doesn't bode well. Whiff and spit perhaps is a different story because of the long-standing use and the close proximity to, a gravelly area that is subject to ocean dilution or whatever happens. And, I'm not going to get into that argument, but, I just don't think that a pit toilet's even on the agenda from my perspective.
I would agree with you, Councillor Casper. I think whiff and spit's different because it's at nearly the end of the spit. And then other areas where you have it, they're out of the sewer area. So I think it's a matter of looking at, for myself, it's option 2, like we see in Broomhill Park or Ed McGregor. I know Ed McGregor has its challenges for other reason, but we can look. So, Council, would you like us to look at more pricing options for number 3, or would you like to progress something in number 2? Of course, you can do nothing, but I don't think that's a good answer. I really think there's a need for a washroom here. I think, did our CAO have her hand up? Yes, okay, go ahead. And then Councillor Casper. Oops.
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. We can certainly make the toilet conversation part of Talktober that we're planning to have on October 15th. So we'll be raising a number of issues with respect to what the public input may continue to be with respect to this issue, and then we can bring a report back, should council wish.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's a report, just getting some public feedback. Put a sticker, pictures. The diagrams were good. I like that, how it all broke down. I think it's and get it from a user perspective. We've all used various types of toilets, but we can do that, Councillor. And then in the meantime, Councillor Casper and I, or Councillor can follow up with the supplier too. Councillor Parkinson?
I would like Through your worship, the Parks Committee have already done this, and we already had the public feedback. It was at Sea Park. The boards were all up. The dots were all up. All the information's there. So I do believe that our staff, Laura Hooper, would probably still have that information. And I think that's what we should go by, because that was one of the highlights of what the public wanted. So I don't know why we would go back to get the same information we already have.
Okay, thanks for that update. Councillor Casper, you had your hand up as well.
I'm fine. I'm looking for some additional information, another option for connections, see what the cost is there. And, I know it's not going to be cheap to run a line underground, both water and hydro, from a pole to feed it and do all that stuff, and then to cover it up. And then the distance might be shorter here, and the cost might be less. That's all I'm saying. Some options.
Okay, so why don't we go with that? If we could get some, maybe even the report that came from the Parks Committee that Councillor Parkinson is referring to, I think that would be of benefit to Council, and the feedback from Sea Park. We can also get a different option for pricing on the washroom itself, the feed line for service water sewer line as outlined by Councillor Casper, and of course we can have, depending on the timing, definitely have this as a discussion item talked over. Okay, so is there a motion that's needed? Is this just good direction? Okay, good. We'll leave it at that then and carry on. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Butterfield. Just rolled out the door. Okay, so that puts us into Bylaws section 7.1. We have bylaw number 676, zoning amendment bylaw 600-40, district lots 241 and 242. And it's basically that council adopt the bylaw cited as zoning amendment bylaw number 676, 600-40. Moved adoption by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any discussion on the motion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next is 7.2, another motion to adopt the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any discussion on the item? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And that brings us to bylaw 682, zoning amendment bylaw 6599, Arranwood Drive. And I will turn this over to staff. We do have the written report and also a presentation. And welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a presentation this evening for the rezoning of 6599 Arranwood. Go back one. There we go. Okay. Sorry. So just as a summary this evening, an application has been made to split zone this subject property to include both neighborhood commercial and low-density multifamily. The property is currently zoned as neighborhood commercial. It's located within the sewer specified area, and within the RM1, we permit apartment building, assisted living facilities, cluster dwelling units, duplex, and townhouse. And the property, it's the hashed area, as you can see. The application would like to construct approximately 14 new townhouses or duplex, triplex units, similar to the property that you just see to the northeast, which is known as the Alders. And just location-wise, you can see that this property is located at the corner of Arranwood and Church Road, just by the Ponds Park trails. Okay, so here's a proposed site plan for the area. The entirety, as I said, is currently zoned C1, and then the hashed area would be converted from commercial to residential. And a loose concept plan of what the applicant would like to do. So the community residential designation within the OCP supports low to medium density residential growth along with some associated and appropriately scaled commercial development. All new residential development shall be challenged by the creation of a Build Green checklist that outlines green options. The OCP supports sustainable construction of single-family and multiple-family residential dwellings to reduce residential sprawl. We also, it looks to support future and existing residential development that minimizes the impacts on municipal infrastructure and support mixed-use development and infill where appropriate. And lastly, to encourage a variety of housing types, including coach housing, row housing, live-work units, and townhouses that diversify the housing stock. So within the OCP section 4.7, we do have policies related to housing, and sorry, it's just slid off the bottom of the page here, but we require that a minimum of 10% of all new multifamily and condominium units are affordable residential housing as defined by the District of Sooke and implemented through housing agreements, phased development agreements, or through density bonusing. However, we'd like to allow developers the flexibility to provide their required affordable housing in different forms, thus creating an affordable housing mix in new developments in the form of secondary suites, condominium rental units, cash in lieu, or various options like that to the District of Sooke. The proposed zoning, the low-density multifamily 1, you can see the permitted uses here. I've just quickly gone over apartment building, assisted living, cluster dwelling units, duplex and townhouses, minimum lot sizes 1,000 square meters. Key point here is probably 30 dwelling units per hectare and a maximum height of 12 meters. And the section 302.8 outlines that a minimum of 5% of the lot area must be developed as an amenity area for residents. You can see the surrounding and adjacent land uses and zonings to the site include the same density, more or less, having RM1 and public park, basically, and small lot residential. So generally, Development Services is supportive of this rezoning to permit the construction of duplexes and triplexes and townhouses only. And the reduction in commercial land is better suited to the true neighborhood commercial node. It's quite a large commercial component that's there at this time, as prescribed by the official community plan, particularly in light of supporting the commercial activity in the town center, which is quite nearby. And the proposed zoning also meets several goals and policies as outlined by the OCP, providing an opportunity for affordable housing, infill development, and diversity of housing forms within walking distance of the town center. And just a summary, again, we're going from neighborhood commercial to low-density multifamily. The designation is community residential. We are on sewer and Capital Regional District water. It's 0.726 hectares and to create approximately 17 new townhouse units. And our recommendation is that staff give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 682. Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to steal your thunder. It's been a while. Go ahead, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. This is a great presentation. I appreciate that very much. Fairly straightforward, but comments and questions from Council? Councillor Pearson and Councillor Loggins?
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Ms. Rice, through the chair. The report summary says there on the first line, it says that it's a split zone, but then when I look at the drawings, it's not clear to me where the split is. Can you kind of take me through that?
Yeah, I probably should have had a new map made. This map was actually what was sent out on the referral, so we kept it. So the property at this point is the entirety of what looks like two lots right now, if that makes sense. So if I go back, the best one probably to look at would be the zoning. There, you can see the full shape. So the RM1 above it is a completely separate lot. And so looking at this, you can see there's basically a line in here where this is severed in two. So this half being the residential, and then this half being the commercial.
Okay, through the chair. So the commercial then would be fronting Church Road and then entrance off of Arranwood potentially or something like that.
There, you can see, so this is a proposal, this
Yeah.
image here, so exactly like that. And the commercial is sort of sketched in the bottom there.
Okay, can you show me on there where the commercial is? Is this where those parking spaces are?
So this would be a commercial unit in draft, and then this is where the townhouse structures would be at. These are parking.
Oh, so you're splitting it sort of on the same angle going from top to bottom.
Correct, so it would kind of, it's sort of a staged severing.
Thank you.
Councillor Loggins?
I just wanted to say that it's nice to see that we have someone going with our commercial nodes thought process, and I look forward to seeing how that actually plays out in this community. I think it's a perfect spot for it. At first, when I read through this, I was like, oh no, are they getting rid of the commercial piece? But I was really happy to see that they're not, so that I'm in support of this, and I'd move, can I move first and second reading?
Yep.
Together? Yeah? Okay,
Yep.
so moved.
Okay, so first and second reading has been moved for the zoning amendment bylaw to rezone a portion of 6599 Arranwood Drive from neighborhood commercial C1 to low density multifamily RM1. Councillor Casper on the motion.
Through you, I don't want to put our planner on the spot because our planner's been working diligently on our official community plan, which is advocating commercial node centers or neighborhood nodes. And so I'm hesitant about changing that concept because when this here was zoned in the first place a number of years ago, that was the concept that was embraced then, that there would be enough property to incorporate some form of commercial activity in that area, i.e. a node. So here we're talking about doing an updated official community plan that's actually going to embrace that within the community. And don't want to put our planner on the spot, doesn't have to answer the question, but I know that what I say is correct, that we are and have had huge discussions around embracing that approach. So that's why I'm a little hesitant about approving this. And my second rationale is this, is that there hasn't been very much discussion in the report that related to some of the potential problems that may occur no matter what the zoning is, whether it's RM1 or this newly revised one, which relates to parking, access, road width, and taking into account the huge issues that are within this whole development on the fact that people park their vehicles on both sides of the roads, and it's very hard for even a regular-sized vehicle to go through on any given time, depending on how people park. And so I personally don't want to see us creating another potential problem along those lines. So those are my comments. I'm not going to oppose the rezoning, but I think that we have to think about certain elements that we may automatically approve that create problems.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, in regard to staff, in regards to the parking issue, how many parking spaces are required for each unit? I was under the impression that 2 were required plus for visitor parking. So, can you tell us how many there are?
At this point, I would just go with the 2 per unit, and then I can't remember. It depends on how many. Do you remember, Blair, how many we need for visitors based on your last one?
Depends on the design.
Yeah.
I think they're looking for one parking spot within the unit and then one in the driveway.
Yeah. So it is tight, definitely, and I know that the applicant would consider, obviously has to consider all that in the design details, and this is, I believe, fewer units than the existing one, and they would be smaller than the existing ones, I think, slightly too, but it depends on, whether this all gets approved.
So depending, do you have any follow-up, Councillor Parkinson? Was that it?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
You're fine? Okay. So depending on whether or not, I mean, this still goes through a public hearing process, and the developer will come and meet with staff. This now is what I would like to do, and then that can flesh out how much parking is available, whether or not there's suites, if they put in suites, and what that triggers and the like. It could be anything within that particular zone, but I think we'll get to it at that point. And the neighborhood commercial still exists on the area off of Church Road. I mean, it does, I do take your point into consideration that this is very close to the town center and how we want the commercial to grow in that area, but this does put the node piece in that we felt was important in the neighborhood. So I think it is a good fit. I mean, I do support it moving along to public hearing, and the developer for this particular one, Woodland Creek, has a lot of experience, and will take into account their experience and what they've already done in this part of the community. So I'm good with that. So it's been moved and seconded already for first and second reading. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Casper?
Yeah, just one last point. I think we all have to be mindful of the amount of parking we required on another project just on the west side of Stone Ridge. I think we spent an hour discussing that issue. And I would hope that that our staff advise the applicant representative, the engineering people, as to what council decided on that particular property, because I don't want to start creating a double standard. Because I know that those issues will be discussed in any event. And, you know, we actually went through a heck of a grind on that one. And like I say, we were almost an hour discussing how much parking and where it's going to go. Because the proof is in the pudding in this community. There isn't enough parking in the residential developments that exist right now, especially when they have suites, because it is a nightmare. So we got to fix that problem.
Yep, no, we spent exactly an hour on that. So, okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And then the second part is to schedule that a public hearing be scheduled in accordance with Section 466 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor of the public hearing? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Next is 7.4, Bylaw 683, zoning amendment bylaw for 2325 Churchill Drive. I'll turn this back to staff.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. For this particular application, the applicant, is looking to rezone. It's just around the corner, or just across the way from the previous one. And they're looking to rezone the entire property from low-density multifamily to small lot residential. And this is to address Sooke's growing housing demand. It's a 1.9 hectare property. Sorry, it says acre, it should be hectare, located within the specified sewer area. This R3 small lot zone permits horticulture, single-family or duplex housing with a minimum of 350 square meter minimum lot sizes. And so the applicant is intending actually to downzone the existing zone for the land for approximately, where it was zoned for 57 townhouses, it will now become 35 new small single-family lots. So just to give you an idea of the change in size of housing. And the proposed lots and homes would be similar in size to those found on Callumwood Lane, which is just above the subject property there. Oh, come on. There we go. So in this case, the official community plan goals and objectives are to ensure the sustainable construction of single-family and multiple-family residential dwellings, to reduce urban residential sprawl. What happened? We're asleep.
So just scoot this way. Scoot this way. Okay. And just look at the screen right there.
Oh.
Or your thing.
I have a paper version too, if I can follow along. Okay. I'm the only one in the dark, apparently. Oh,
you have to make sure that you stay.
Okay. the public is also in the dark. Just so you know. Okay. So we'll continue on. So our goals are to reduce residential sprawl, ensure future and existing residential development minimizes the impact on municipal infrastructure, and to also support mixed-use development such as commercial, residential, and infill where appropriate. And so in this case, it's more so infill. Okay. This is dancing tonight. Okay, so the OCP policy on housing is similar to the last presentation, where the district requires a minimum of 10% of the total of any proposed bare land or strata single-family residential subdivisions that are affordable, or to be affordable housing lots as defined by the District of Sooke. Affordable single-family lots shall be sold at an affordable rate through tools such as covenants and housing agreements. Again, the district would consider allowing developers to have flexibility to provide their required affordable housing in different forms, thus creating an affordable housing mix, such as secondary suites, condominium, rental units, cash in lieu, towards on or off-site affordable housing. Thank you. Oh, all right. So more or less, again, here's the site, and with just a proposed site plan image of Callumwood Lane kind of superimposed in there as to what things, scale, and form, I think, are sketched as at this point in time. The rezoning to small lot basically has the 350 square meter minimums, permits, as we said before, horticulture, single-family dwelling, or one duplex. But duplex is only if the lots are over 600 square meters, so they have to be a much bigger lot to accommodate a duplex. And maximum lot coverage is 45%, with maximum heights being 10.5 meters, which actually is very high. All right, and again, similar adjacent zonings and land uses surrounding our R3, P1, and RM1, so multifamily, small lot residential, park, and the middle school. So from an application review perspective, Development Services is supportive of this rezoning application to permit the construction of single-family homes or duplexes at subsequent planning stages. However, staff will look forward to addressing parking and maintaining unique form and character, as well as neighborhood privacy within small lot subdivisions, particularly with regard to secondary and small suites. Affordability may be a challenge given the high quality of construction and design that this particular applicant is renowned for. And the reduction in density on the site is consistent with adjacent streets. However, the proposed zoning and policies outlined by the OCP encourage a variety of housing types, which include coach housing, row housing, live-work units, townhouses, in order to diversify our housing stock. This, in a summary, again, we're rezoning from low-density multifamily to small lot residential to community residential land use designation, 1.9 hectares, and with the goal of creating approximately 35 new lots. Your Worship.
That's great. Thank you very much for the presentation again. Questions from Council. Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I'll be supporting this because I think it's consistent with the market and the area. They've done a great job with all things. Is this included in our calculations for the sewer? So it was okay. So then there's no issues with that. Okay.
Okay, so first and second reading's been moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Ray. Discussion on the motion? Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I just want to echo the same comments that I mentioned on the previous one. Read the parking issue and the number of spaces that would be required. It would have been nice if there, because I can't see in the paperwork I have or on this, a preliminary layout of any proposed subdivision like we had with the other one. So to me, it would have been nice to have that because there is a question of access to the site, because it looks like all of this is going to be funneled onto just the one road. That may pose a problem in regard to the close proximity to the other areas like the park, etc. So it's just something that I thought we should be cognizant of. So parking is the issue, and also the width of these roads.
Okay.
Thanks.
Given that, thank you, Councillor Casper, that this is moving ahead to a public hearing, and perhaps that could come back at that time, just as there may be neighborhood concerns or comments about how that's going to be addressed. So maybe that can be added into that present, because there's always an opportunity for a presentation before going into the public hearing. So just hearing that this has been raised by council, it would be good maybe just to have that addressed at that time. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Between now and the public hearing, we can work with the applicant and come up with a preliminary plan to show you that will alleviate the concerns with regards to parking, access, etc.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Loggins?
And just to add to that, I'm not sure if the applicants discussed with staff about having suites or not, but that would just factor into the parking discussion as well.
Yeah. Though overall, there has been a reduction of the number of units that would go in there, but I hear everyone's point, so we can have more information come forward, provided council moves us forward. Anything else? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. The second part is then a public hearing be scheduled in accordance with Section 466 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Great. Thank you. Okay, so we'll look forward to those public hearings in the very near future. This brings us to the next one, 7.5, Permissive Tax Exemption Bylaw. I'll turn this over to staff to introduce. Just we did hear some comments earlier from members of the public about some of their concerns that were raised. So just if council could please be mindful of that as we proceed through this report. Thank you.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. This report is on page 61 of your package. Permissive tax exemption bylaw hasn't been in front of council for 10 years. It was a 10-year term. There have been amendments throughout the term where we've added a property or changed its legal description, but this is a full new term for the bylaw. Currently, there's bylaw 337 and 338, and as noted in the report, we're proposing that it be combined just into one bylaw. So, and for a term of 3 years instead of 10 years. 10 years is the maximum term under the legislation, but 3 years is maybe a good period so you can have a fresh look at them again instead of just sort of forgetting about them for 10 years. There is a requirement to do an annual review as well, but in reality, it doesn't really work that way, and we just prefer, unless we find out information from the applicant that they've changed the nature of their business or something, it's really going to just stay in the bylaw. So as noted in the report, these are permissive exemptions, so council may grant them. You do not have to grant them. Some exemptions are statutory in nature. So churches, for example, the building and the land directly underneath the church is exempt statutorily, but not the land surrounding the church. That has to be done through a permissive exemption. And as I mentioned, there's currently 2 bylaws, and what you've got in front of you tonight is a draft of 1 bylaw, and for 3 years. We've reviewed all the applications, and there's an attachment, an appendix to the bylaw that lists all the applications, and most of them are renewals. There's one new one from the Sooke Family Resort Society, which is going to be leasing a space similar to what we had with the Salvation Army before. So that would just be for a portion of that building, so it would be approximately a 33%. And then there was 2 other new applications, both of which we could not support as staff and are not included in the draft bylaw at this time. One because, as noted on page 62 of the report, one was from West Coast Adventure College, and the requirements of a statutory exemption for an independent school aren't really met by the nature of that operations. The other one you've heard from the society tonight is the Steps to the Future Child Care Society. The main reason being is council's policy requires it to be in compliance with all of council's policies and bylaws, et cetera. And right now we have an outstanding issue with that particular operation. There's also a question of, it is a society, it is a registered charity, it still conducts a business, so no argument that it's a society and that it's a charity. It's just whether or not daycares should be granted permissive exemptions. We couldn't find any others when we had a look at some other communities. So, regarding if they were operating in a church before, of course, the church would have been exempt, so there wouldn't have been a tax issue to be passed on to them before. So anyway, those were, staff had to do a review. We have to have this bylaw to BC Assessment Authority by the end of October. So there is a bit of a time sensitivity to this, and there's only one other council meeting before that time. So if there is a change to the bylaw that council would like to make, that may require another meeting. We'll just have to recognize that and schedule a special meeting. Okay, so that's the report. If you have any questions, I can answer them.
Okay, I just have a question in regards to the one for Sooke Family Resource Society that's on Sooke Road. I did read in here that the landlord, because it goes to the landlord, that the landlord will pass the saving to the tenant. Is there some way, though, that we can receive complete confirmation that that happens? Because in some ways it may depend on how the tenant's lease is written, if it's gross, it's a triple net or whatever. I just want to ensure that we do that the tenant does in fact benefit from it. And some sort of, I have no problem supporting this. I just want to know for sure that they are going to benefit, and maybe something in writing from the landlord or some sort of written proof, I think, would be good just to have on the records for it.
Yes, Your Worship. There is a letter from the landlord stating they will pass the savings on. We don't have a copy of the lease agreement yet, but it would also need to be in the lease agreement.
Okay, so then the twofold thing would happen. Okay, because I believe that's what occurred where the Salvation Army was located. And then it would also be tied to that particular tenancy. So let's say the tenant moves, they move and expand in a different location, and just a regular business were to come into that space, then they would, in that following year, I guess, go back to, it would be lifted. It wouldn't remain in perpetuity.
Yep. Again, Your Worship, it does require staff to monitor the situation, because we did have a case before where they did keep receiving, that we weren't aware the tenant had actually moved.
Okay.
So you do actually have to, staff is going to have to stay on top of this to make sure, hopefully the landlord is just going to alert us that there's been a change in the tenancy.
Okay, or the tenant, one or the other, but I think that's an important piece to note. Okay, speaking order, Councillor Pearson, then Casper, please, then Loggins.
Okay. Thank you for the, through the chair, thank you for the report, Mr. Blackwell. And I agree that 10 years is too long. I just have a question mathematically. If we made it a 4-year cycle as opposed to a 3, then every council would have an opportunity to look at it. If we make it a 3-year term, it could be one council looks at it 2 times, and then the next council wouldn't get to look at it. So, and maybe our timing is good for a 4-year term now, so that in the last year of the future councils it would work out. So I would make a suggestion that we look at a 4-year as opposed to 3. So.
Councillor Casper, then Loggins.
So I was both myself and Councillor Parkinson were part of the council that actually made the conscious decision to make it a 10-year exemption. The reason we did that is because we were of the mind to reduce the regulatory burden and paperwork that the nonprofits and the people who had to fill out and come on a pretty regular basis to ask for these exemptions. So the idea was give them 10 years, and that we would monitor the situation, and when things change, most people are very honest, and they do advise accordingly. And we had a situation where Knox Church, because they had sold the property, then they knew that they no longer had the ability to receive the tax exemption. So I don't support a shorter term. I think that if we can do things that make it life easier for those who are providing a wide range of services, the better off we all will be. And I will give by example that most of these organizations elect members to serve on their boards on an annual basis. And so there's nothing more frustrating than being a volunteer and then being told that suddenly you have to fill out a pile of forms so you can go cap in hand to the municipality to get an exemption. And that's what we faced and found when we were on council at the time, and hence we decided make it 10 years because that's what's statutorily allowed, and no one could really argue that these long-standing exemptions wouldn't continue to apply beyond 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, or 5 years. There was no legitimate arguments as saying that there was justification to do a shorter time frame. So my other question, I guess it relates to the Macola Housing Society. So where it says it's 100%, is that for the building that they own? And is there not some commercial components to that building on the second floor?
Through your worship to Councillor Casper, Macola has 25 units of housing. St. Vincent de Paul has 4 strata units. And I've noted in the report on in pages 68 to 69, starting on 67 actually. Actually, page 67 at the bottom. There are some units in the St. Vincent de Paul units that are leased out to the Sooke Yoga group. So council could consider whether that meets council's objective and you still want to give a permissive exemption if it's a community type service that's being offered, or whether you want to give a partial exemption to maybe only 50% of the units.
So just further to that, so does that mean that they're currently receiving a tax exemption?
Through your worship, yes, they are currently receiving it.
Well, I'll go on record. That was never my understanding because they were a commercial operation, a business. They have a business license. My God, if we're giving an exemption for somebody who's advertising as doing, some form of commercial activity, I know the massage therapist down the road. Those people are in a commercial building. I don't see them getting tax exemption. And if we're going to not give an exemption for people who are a nonprofit society providing daycare services in the community, well, then why would we be giving these people an exemption or a break? Like, that doesn't make sense at all. It really doesn't. Spas, which are in people's houses, were zoned commercial and assessed for commercial purposes, and spas and hotels, etc., which, you could say, okay, there's a yoga component or some therapy, but it's still run as a business. So I'm a little taken aback when I hear that. That was never my understanding, and perhaps I missed something at the time, and perhaps it was done when our current staff was not here, but I've got a serious problem with that one. And I don't want to see a bylaw be given any readings until we deal with the issue with the presentation we heard from the steps of the future, because we've got 2 meetings in October, and this bylaw here can be given first, second, and third reading and adoption at one other meeting. So at least that's what I see. And there's 5 Mondays in October this month. So there's 5 Mondays, and this is not a bylaw that we have to actually go through a formal advertising and get public hearing on it. So it's a different class of bylaw. So I think there's a way But I'm not prepared to support any of these tonight based on the information we heard. Because I see some discrepancies here that I just can't even palate. There's no way. And I've only scratched the surface.
Okay. There's just staff had some.
Yes, Your Worship, to Your Worship. It is a time-sensitive bylaw. It does have public notice requirement. So I don't believe would meet, and I'd look to our corporate officer to add something to this after I'm done here. The yoga issue is a perfect example of why we should have a shorter term bylaw instead of 10 years. We don't find out about these things, and unless they're telling us, we're not going to notice it from a staff level. So 3 years at least, you'd have a time to fully review everything again. We also could bring forward a expedited renewal application, so really just saying, are you still in business? Are you still operating as a charitable nonprofit purpose?
Or maybe are you still open as opposed to
are you still open? Do you still exist at that address, et cetera?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, over to our CAO, then to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's important to note at this point in time that Council's policy with respect to permissive tax exemptions does include that you need to be in compliance with all of the district's policies and bylaws. Part of the reason why one of these applications was not included is that they are not in compliance. So happy to go in camera with Council to talk about why that is and to provide further information. And if Council wants us to, in order to meet our statutory timelines, hold a special meeting of Council staff, I'm more than happy to support that.
Do we not already have 2 scheduled meetings in October? Because typically we have one. I know that there's Thanksgiving on the 9th. We always have a regular one on the 10th.
Tuesday.
So the 10th and the week after. Over to our corporate officer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. There, yes, is 2 remaining meetings at which we could address the bylaws, but there is not enough time to meet the statutory notice requirements, which would need to be placed in the paper this week and the following week. If we don't give the bylaw first reading until the 10th, the newspaper ad would have to go in on the 11th, which we just can't meet the requirements for the cutoff for the notification or the ad space, because we wouldn't know what that bylaw is going to look like until the night it's given first and second reading.
I see. So in that case, depending on what Council does today, this evening, but then we could schedule a special meeting for the 2nd.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. There's an echo. Sorry, Councillor Casper, can you turn off your microphone? Perfect, thank you. So if we could, if needed, schedule one on the 2nd, and then that would meet all of our timelines. Okay. Councillor Loggins, please, then, Ray.
Thank you. I think one of my biggest concerns with this is the steps to the future application. So I'm glad we kind of got some timeline things worked out. I think that will hopefully allow us some more time to learn more about the decision from staff, because I do agree if it's not in compliance, then of course we can't move forward. But I do need to make it clear that societies and charities run businesses. They have business plans. They do have to act as a business. So I don't believe that should be in question. If their charitable status was in question, it would have been revoked by powers higher than us.
Councillor Ray?
Your Worship, just to comment, following up on the information brought before us tonight by Ms. Knight, as I stated earlier, I was on council in the last term when Macola came before us. And at that time, we're requesting the waiver of the development cost charges, which were about $80,000 to the District of Sooke. And at that time, and I see they still make reference to it, it's on page 254 of our package of 359, that through community partners and funders, Macola is able to provide subsidized housing, which I think is what Ms. Knight was getting at, affordable rentals and assisted living units. In the letter from Mr. Albers, he says, in Sooke, we do not offer any supports to our tenants, and Macola is operating solely as a landlord. This building is not supportive housing and is governed by the Residential Tenancy Act. That, for me, was not why they received the $80,000 waiver of the development cost charges. So I'm very surprised to hear this comment. Because I remember Councillor Pearson and Casper and I were at the open house. We met a few of the young people that were in there, and I would be 99% positive that they were not making nearly $25,000 a year. And so I don't know if things have shifted since council from the previous term endorsed and waived those development cost charges. But I'm quite surprised to hear this today. And so without any further information, I'm reluctant. They may be able to come before us and show how it does meet it. But with the paperwork in front of me and the comments from Mr. Albers, I don't see how this is helping our homeless First Nations children in our community.
That is my understanding as well, Councillor Ray, and that's what also triggered different fundings, whether it was from the Capital Region Housing Trust Fund that I sat on at the time as a commissioner, and was there. So that was the reasoning. It was filling that gap. So I think that's where there are outstanding questions that council has on these. It does give us a little bit of time. I think Mr. Albers is away right now, so he'll be back. He can respond to council's queries and have them answered as we were raised earlier by a member of the public and then others from council. And then, of course, we need to, the yoga studio, though, it is a business, so I can see how that can be sectioned out. But in terms of the other pieces that the St. Vincent Society owns, to me, that's a straightforward one that fits well with this. I think the outstanding question is the Macola housing piece, and then also the one or reasoning for the yoga studio, number 2, would be important to understand there. But a lot of the other ones are very straightforward, as they always have been. There's solid answering, and then I hear what I appreciate the concerns raised by staff with steps to future childcare, but at the same time, just given what was raised, and I get that they were in locations, whether it was a school or a church, that already had these exemptions in place that would have been passed on to the tenant, still filling a really important need in our community. And then we see how there's a commitment of $10 a day childcare. Like, how would you possibly make that work? I don't know. So I get that there's some outstanding issues, but we do have a bit of time. We're used to calling in special meetings as necessary, and it's UBCM kind of throws us off, but we will need to do that as we go forward. But there's some more hands up, so I'll go to Councillor Pearson, then Casper, please.
Yeah, and just through the chair to you, I echo your statements exactly. So is there a way to streamline this process tonight to look at the obvious ones and then talk about the outstanding issues at an October meeting? I don't know if we can we move first reading or not? I want to know if we can.
I'll turn to our corporate officer.
If we were to place the ad and the bylaw change dependent on what you're going to do with those outstanding issues, the bylaw would need to be re-advertised, so there doesn't make much sense in doing the first advertisement.
Okay, anything else, Councillor Pearson? No. Councillor Casper, then?
So it's happened in the past, and I'm very supportive of our local paper publication, but if we're required to give statutory notice to the public, minimum 3 days, maximum 10 days written notice, the same as a public hearing, well, then there are ways to accommodate that through other forms of print media if we had to. But I think the options that we have are to hold additional council meetings. So I'm supportive of doing that. But I think there's a fundamental question here. Council has the final decision. It's our decision. And we're the ones who are actually in a position to make the judgment. Are these organizations providing a valuable service to our community? And that's the fundamental question. If they aren't, then there should be no exemption. So that's the bottom line here. And yes, here's all the guidelines that are in provincial statute. Here's the district's policies. But you know what? My history around this place, I've seen a heck of a lot of policies that have been ignored. And you know what? People never batted an eyelash. Nobody complained. So when it comes down to providing valuable services in the community, I think we have to strive to try to make these things happen. And, to actually go out of our way to give assistance where demonstrated need is there. And we all know that the question of child care in the community is a struggle for young working families. But this whole question of Macola housing and what was raised here tonight by one of the presenters speaks volumes. And I just want to set for the record, Council did not waive the development cost charge. It's against the law for us to do that. What we did do is we made a grant available on an annual basis to offset those costs because it was illegal for us to waive those development cost charges. So on an annual basis, there is a transfer of money that replenishes what was collected or what should have been collected. And so that's how that was done, because we didn't have the authority to just blanket waive. We can't do that. And fees and charges must be paid. And I'm a little shocked at the fact that like what was said by the proponents of this project, and you served on the CRD, and with great fanfare, we all attended 3 different levels of government, I think, were involved in this one, and everything was said, and now we find out that it's not living up to what the expectations are. To me, that's not right. And to me, that clearly demonstrates, guess what? Perhaps, yes, they're partially meeting the need, but on the other hand, they're not. So we've got to really look at that one closely. Yeah, and I apologize for going on, but I really feel strong about these things.
No, I appreciate that, Councillor Casper. I was just going to say it's important that we hear from them directly and get clarity. Staff has some hands up. Our CAO, our corporate officer, Director of Finance. We'll go to our CAO, please.
I was trying to give the Director of Finance an opportunity to go before me, but I think, with all due respect to Councillor Casper, staff's job is to make sure that we're applying legislation, which includes our bylaws and our policy. I know that Council can choose not to follow its own policy, but staff can't. So that's why these decisions were made to include and not include some things in this report. I think it's also important to note that had we written the report a different way to include information which I'm of the belief needs to be shared with Council in camera, that's why I think doing this delay is really, really important so that Council has full information in front of them in order to make an informed decision before we go back into regular meeting of Council. So I just thought it was very important for us to clarify the fact that we apply the legislation, we provide advice and recommendations to Council, and Council can choose to do with that advice what they will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? to our...
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Basically, I was going to say the same thing. The reason we left, we had to leave one out is because Council's policy does not allow us to include it. It's Council's policy, of course, so it's for Council's decision, and as the CAO has noted, happy to share some more information in camera. The other part, I would like our corporate officer just to weigh in again on the timelines required and everything. So.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So I just did want to clarify Councillor Casper's comment about the required notification. The legislation does require advertising in a newspaper and 2 consecutive weeks. So that pushes our timelines back because we can't advertise too close. The ad circulation just doesn't allow for it. Sorry, the other thing I was going to suggest, if council did want to give direction that this bylaw be brought back as a 4-year term, that could be done tonight so that we can incorporate that change into the bylaw as well.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Your Worship, I would like to move that we defer the permissive tax exemptions until the next meeting.
Okay, is there a seconder? Or did you want to add more to the motion?
No.
Okay, seconder?
I'd like to speak to it.
Seconded by Councillor Pearson. Go ahead, Councillor Parkinson.
And I have concerns about the Macola issue as well and steps to the future, but I would also like to ask about West Coast Adventure College and why they are not included in it.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Parkinson, it's the statutory requirement requires them to offer the same level of education as that in the public school system. So if they had a curriculum that matched, for example, a private school like St. Michael's or St. Margaret's, et cetera, they get permissive tax exemptions.
Correct. So would that fall that they are considered a college university and that they are recognized by the provincial government as an institution? So would that make them comply with what we require?
Through Your Worship, they would have to be accredited to offer the same level of education, so meet the BC curriculum for high school, I guess it is. Right now, they are a private educational institution, but they don't meet that extra step of actually being like a full school.
I thought that they were accredited, though.
They are.
Yep, through Your Worship. The legislation requires them to offer the same level of education as a public school system, as a public school, as in St. Michael's, St. Margaret's, etc.
As a high school?
It could be an elementary school. St. Michael's has elementary schools as well. But if you read in their bylaws, you'll see they're included because they meet that section. They have one. They offer adventure training. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if that's offered in the public school system as a curriculum type, but they would have to demonstrate that, and it would have to be demonstrated to us that it's actually set so by the Ministry of Education.
Oh, I see. But this would give them the opportunity to address that. So that's where the extra time would be a benefit, and I would just be curious to hear that from them. Councillor Parkinson, you had a follow-up?
Yes, please. Through Your Worship. So that means that it's only for like grades 1 to 12 or whatever, but it does not include university or college courses that are accredited by the province. Is that correct?
Through Your Worship, I don't think the legislation gets it down into that level of detail. So whether it's post-secondary or secondary or elementary. So.
Councillor Loggins and Casper?
And it will be nice to get some more clarification on this, but I think the way my mind's working right now is that there are math courses and then you can get a math degree, and there's business courses and you can get a business degree, but perhaps not adventure tourism courses that you could take in a high school where you could carry on to take adventure tourism courses in a college, if that makes sense. So like the continuity of going from high school to college, that's how I'm kind of seeing it.
I would just be curious to get more to hear what they say, because if they're speaking about what's offered in, like if the legislation is speaking about like grade 9 or grade 8 or courses, or St. Margaret's or like a private school or something, but it's not specific on post-secondary, I'd be curious to know that, because if post-secondary colleges and the like receive tax exemptions, then this would be consistent with what those institutions receive. So,
Your Worship, we'll contact the ministry and just see exactly what kind of requirement they require, but there's nothing in the application to demonstrate that they're accredited through either the Ministry of Education or Advanced Education. So
I see. Okay, it would just be good to know that. I mean, of course, we're always wanting to obtain taxes because taxes is what enables the district to do its operations and to meet the growing needs of the community. But at the same time, it's being reasonable in terms of how these services are being delivered, be it through supportive housing, the ball field, all the number of things. These are all economic drivers for our community. Like having ball tournaments is important to our overall community's well-being. We don't bat an eye at that. But having a place where young people can advance their education, or other people can advance and then open up a business and stay in Sooke. And when we're in the hub of ecotourism, you could have that argument as well. And then, of course, there's childcare, which is desperately needed for anyone that wants to work or continue working. Back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to add, this is a statutory exemption, so it wouldn't require any council. It'd be included in our bylaw, so you'd be approving the bylaw. But if they meet it, it's a statutory exemption. And then what would have to also be exempted would be any land around it if council chose to do so. And we're talking about a portion of the building, not the whole building, because we all know there's a restaurant there, and
of course,
et cetera. So.
Got it. Okay, so we'll get more on that. Councillor Casper, then Loggins. We are in a motion. We do have a motion.
No, I know, and I would like to see some additional information relating to any changes in any regulations that may have occurred in the past 3, 4, or 5 years, because I was under the distinct impression that the people in question were actually quite pleased that there were some changes in either a regulation or legislation that recognized this form of education that these people were offering met a new criteria. And that was what we were told, I can remember, during our last term on council, I think. And I'd stand to be corrected, but... And so perhaps we can just make sure that everything's looked at.
Yep, through your worship to Councillor Casper, we will check with the ministry, and they do claim they're accredited private training institutions. So it could be they're covered under an act, the Advanced Education Act, but we'll check with the ministry.
Okay, very good. Councillor Loggins?
I'm just wondering if we could also add to the check in terms of the Macola housing situation and the letter from Ms. Knight, where it's talking about the government policy further defines supported housing, and it goes on to say those who are previously homeless or at risk of homelessness. And to me, to say at risk of homelessness when we have a zero vacancy rate is pretty subjective, because right now a one bedroom is going for $1,300 in our community, so you would have to make $50,000 a year to afford that. So anyone making less than $50,000 would be at risk of homelessness based on a 30%, which should be the max amount you're spending on homelessness. So, or sorry, on your home. So if we could possibly, I don't know if they have any additional information, but if we could possibly get more info on what the requirements are exactly for Macola in terms of risk of homelessness as well, that would be great.
Okay. Pardon me. So we've had some discussion. So most of it is fairly straightforward. There's just clarity that we're looking for from Macola. Council has raised some concerns there. the West Coast Adventure College, and then Steps to Future Childcare. So this is where we do have the postponement notice.
Your Worship, and the St. Vincent de Paul, the units that were in the St. Vincent de Paul that were to the
right, the commercial unit, the other, not the retail and the outreach offices, but it's more the yoga studio. I think there's two with the occupier or something. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so then we will be back to receive this at the special council meeting on October 2nd. I would just recommend, given the comments raised by council and the fact that there may be some proponents here that would enter into discussion, to keep that agenda light. It is just after UBCM, and then we have a series of meetings in October. It should really be to delve into this specifically. I think in the meantime, council could consider, what do you think about the whole 10-year, 4-year thing? It's just something to have in mind, and then when we regroup on that, then we can hit that all at the same time, and then staff can make all the adjustments in one full sweep and go forward that way. So why don't we just have that conversation when we regroup on this whole item? Okay? So I'll call the question then on this motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And thank you, everyone, for your patience in being here this evening. We'll be back here on October the 2nd. Should you have any questions, though, in the interim, please contact our finance department. Probably the best person, or you can contact our CAO or our finance director, either way. Of course, mayor and council at any time. Okay. So that moves us into 8.2. We have a new business item on seasonal adornments. This came up in June as well, and then in the summertime, we just sort of did a check-in with council just to see what your desire was to do other things. There was sort of there's a fulsome report here on different items. Getting more lighting, some additional banners, some hoop lights, or anything else that you see here, and what you want to do for spending on this. So, comments on seasonal adornments. It's just timely right now, particularly if we're looking at ordering something. They have to be manufactured or bid or whatever process, and certainly arrive here in time for everything to be installed, so we're not rushing. It's in the yellow pages, in the yellow materials. Yeah. So there was some ideas, some additional seasonal banners, 3 additional seasonal lights, purchase of hoop tree lights via request for quotes, and they would come from the seasonal adornment budget. And then, of course, there's other ideas, I believe, depending on what you want to spend. Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Your Worship. In regards to our banners, that we have had discussion how we wanted our banners to be in the center of town, where it's highly visible for the people. And I had brought forward that the people on the other side of Sooke Road, on West Coast Road, said they love what we do. The people that were in Pharmasave, People's, the shops there, were saying, but every time you end at the lights here and we get nothing. And we had this discussion, and we talked about putting up our banners that they would go along that way to go out towards the Hope Center to the post office. And that hasn't taken place, but just driving around town, we made mention of how the banners went up at Sea Park. I've also noticed that there's banners up in Arranwood, and I don't know how our banners got up to be put into a private subdivision and not in the center of town where our businesses are paying the taxes and they are not receiving anything. So for me, this is a real problem, and I would like to see that if we are purchasing more, that they start going down the road on West Coast Road.
Okay, response from staff?
Thank you, Your Worship, through the Councillor Parkinson. I'm not sure how our banners got up into a private subdivision. I'm aware of one in particular. There's 4. Okay, so I need to go back to park staff and find out what happened there. With respect to the seasonal adornment within the business district of Sooke, I know that we can only put them on the adornment lamps. We can't put them on BC Hydro poles. So if this is council's wish that they provide direction to staff to make sure that we are focusing on the business district in Sooke as opposed to other places, then I am more than happy to carry that message to staff.
Just a comment about the banners being in like Arranwood and other areas. In part, and I remember from being on the previous council, we had chosen a particular type of lamp, street lamp, that we wanted the developers to put in, and we wanted the banners. So it's a public road, even though it is in a certain suburb, but we insisted that those banners, so we'd have to think of if that's the type of light to accommodate banners throughout the community, then then why did we insist that they put in that particular street light? So then we have to look at expanding out our banner budget to cover. Otherwise, why have somebody put in a particular light that can support a banner if we're not going to put anything on it? Back to Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Your Worship, and I understand that, except for during our discussions, we said that we would put them downtown and that they would go out towards the Hope Centre. And we have done nothing for that direction in 3 years. So I think it's about time that it goes out there and that they get some seasonal adornments as well as the rest of town.
Yep, no, I completely agree with you there. I think it's just making sure we can, there must be something we can do there. Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I just want to pick up on what Councillor Parker said. In the 2016 budget, we had allocated $250,000 to exactly do what Councillor Parkinson outlined, that the money was never spent. Most of us were a bit surprised as to why that didn't happen. We have $100,000 in this year's budget to accommodate something.
What budget?
In doing some streetscape improvements between Otter Point Road and Hope Centre. So there's $100,000 in capital project there. That was pared down from the $250,000 that was identified and clearly discussed on a number of occasions in 2016 during our budget deliberations. And the whole focus was to do exactly that, pick up from what we did in the town centre and accommodate the storefronts on at least one side of West Coast Road between Otter Point and Hope Centre. So that's, I just want to substantiate that. The other thing is that, is it really necessary to actually go out and purchase $4,000 worth of additional seasonal bound banners when we did purchase some last year? And to me, I don't think those are worn out. They had a Christmas theme, and I'm more inclined to spend more money on lighting because you get the bigger bang for the buck when you see lights, and banners don't have the same significant impact. So I think that maybe do a little bit. We did banners last year. We don't necessarily have to do banners again this year. It says cardinal banners. Well, I don't know how that came about, but I don't recall us even discussing doing more banners. We talked about lighting. We talked about adornments. And the adornments were, from what I understood, was clusters of colored hoop-like trees. I know that was clearly discussed. And I know, picking up on what we were presented at FCM and the discussions we had with suppliers there, that there was packages submitted, and those are noted in the staff report as to what we could do or what's readily available. So I just wanted to reinforce what Councillor Parkin said on doing something to the west. And also, one other thing, I found it odd that when I went into that Churchill Meadows subdivision up there and saw these banners, I did notice that there were actually banner mounts installed that were black, totally different than the color of the poles that were there originally. So it looked to me that these were new acquisition of clamps to accommodate these banners. And, you know, I'd like to be proven wrong, but nowhere else in that subdivision are there any poles, light standards, that have clamp mounts. None. So I thought you should know that, because I think that's an important element, because they just seem totally out of place and brand new. So.
Okay, so our CAO can follow up with staff on that, but I think just in reading this here, this is a recommendation from staff, and it's just to have the banners and the seasonal lights purchased to complete the existing sets. I just don't know exactly where those are. For myself, I think a banner and the hoop light turnaround can be done reasonably fast. The lighting, though, has to be ordered and shipped. So I think some of this we can continue talking about. We are just reading it now because it's come in sort of today as a new business item, but I sort of pushed for it to come in sooner because then we're at UBCM and there's an opportunity to talk to suppliers and the like. So that's where I thought you would want something to go forward with. But if you like, we can just postpone this whole report until after UBCM or part of it. Councillor Parkinson.
We also, when we were discussing this previously, we also talked about the trees that were going to be decorated for the lights. And I had suggested I would like to still see the district tree out front here decorated and the one at the Legion. And so I do know that we require lights for both those. So just so that you're aware of that. There wasn't enough lights on the trees.
Yeah, no, I agree that we'd want to do that. And then there was some issue with the light. The kiosk never lit up because there was some electrical problem. Yeah, and I heard here like lights were kind of just thrown on the tree and things weren't connected, and then they're up. You can't access it. So that's where I think, unfortunately, depending on what council wants to do, there will be a bit of staff time supervising that the lighting is done up and then it works before the contractor drives off with this lift. To our CAO, then to Councillor Casper.
Thank you, Your Worship. As noted in the report, there's about $12,000, $764 left in the budget for the seasonal adornment. Should council wish to exceed that budget, we're going to need a motion resolution from council stating where that money is going to come from. So I'm not suggesting by any means that it's completely up to council whether or not you want to dip into council contingency or operational contingency to get the funds you so desire. But just as a note that when we do pass a resolution, that we will also have to pass a resolution for how much additional money and from what contingency you'd like it to come from.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Casper?
I'm prepared, because of the timing, to at least give some authority by way of a motion that the lighting that's identified in option 1, 2, and 4 be approved. So, and that's on page 19 of 24, so that the orders can be made.
Okay, so you're looking at page 19 of 24?
Yes. And so
under the location 1 town center option, okay, 1, 2, and 4.
Yeah, in the 4 items that are listed. So because of the time elements were necessary to get the orders in and to get everything done so that they can go up, I would move that item option 1, option 2, and option 4 be approved.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Pearson. Go back to Councillor Casper, because we do need to identify where the funding will come from.
Yes, so the money would come from the remaining, and we do have a special budget, line item budget called Community Enhancements, correct, in our budget?
Through your worship, that's correct, but the Development Services Director isn't here, and I can't speak to all what's been committed under that budget right now.
Well, I would then, well, perhaps if we could, well, do you want to do two motions, or is that your preference? To have them linked?
No, they can go together. My only comment back to you, Councillor Casper, is that
banners can be done in short order.
So, and, I know that we need to do this to get them ordered. It's just, though, to make sure, like, if there's one light, that we don't have an empty, because they're all like banner on one side, light on the other. So if we're ordering a light, that this side isn't empty.
Well, I agree, and that's the whole issue that I raised 4 years ago when the lights or the lamp standards were purchased in the first place. Why didn't they have double clamps on them? So you could have double-sided banners, double-sided lights. And for some reason, it never got done. And it's not rocket science here we're talking about, and none of the staff were here involved in that discussion. That was under an old council with different staff. So I think where there's a will, there's a way. If clamps could be purchased for other lamp standards in the district of Sooke, I'm sure that clamps could be purchased to enhance the downtown part of Sooke so we can have double the lighting on each lamp standard. It just makes common sense.
No, I totally get that. We have a motion. We have one.
Yeah.
It's been moved and seconded by Councillor Casper and Councillor Pearson. The first one.
First bit.
So we're doing them separately.
Oh, actually, no, they were together. Councillor
Well, we
Casper
haven't
asked.
identified a source yet.
Yeah, it was just the source, but it has been moved and seconded. So I totally get what you're saying. I just don't have this in my head that what we're approving to order is going to leave us with an empty banner spot, is all. Because we're going with what is outlined here to order. Option 1 is to complete the set, so there's 3 units. Then we're ordering 22 double sets, and then we're doing the hoop lighting. So that's where, given that arithmetic, are we empty somewhere? That's all. Go ahead.
Option 1 says, note this option would not be required if option 2 is selected. So you could get rid of option 1 and just have 2 and 4. And then everything's included in it, correct?
Oh, okay. Right. That's right. Okay, good. Thanks for catching that. So do you want to make that amendment then? Then we can actually take out option 1 because it's covered by option 2.
Correct.
And then that negates the whole thing on, we don't need to worry about option 3. Thank you. And then we just need to know where the funds are going to come from. The difference. We have our seasonal lightings, and then the balance will come from park enhancements? Community enhancements.
Or our CAO contingency fund.
Operating contingency fund.
Yeah.
So
and not the council contingency fund.
Yeah, so just do that the amount required be approved from the additional funding required from either the community enhancement fund or the operating contingency. And then that covers it off. Good? Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I think the motion was 2, 3, and 4. I think 3's dropped off if I'm mistaken.
Oh, it was 1, 2, and 4.
Option 1 doesn't need to exist anymore.
Oh, I see. Okay. So then that changes my numbers. My recollection in past years was that we would add a bit every year to this. I don't know, nearly $20,000 in seasonal adornments. I'm not going to support this one. I think that we should be looking at what's left in our budget for this year. I think that, if we build it every year, I just find it difficult to spend $20,000 this year after what we spent last year on seasonal adornments. I think we have a budget for it, and I think we should try to stay in that budget. Councillor Loggins?
This is where Ebenezer Scrooge comes out and agrees with Councillor Ray. This makes me sick to even think about it. The fact that we spend $20,000 in our budget anyway as a line item, I've never been comfortable with that, and I've always said that as well. So to go over the budget, I completely don't agree with that, so I'll be voting against the motion.
Your Worship, sorry, I smell smoke. Does anybody else smell smoke?
That just picked up.
It's vapor.
Smells like something's burning. No, I smell something's burning. Oh.
It smells like a flat iron. Like it's getting stronger. It's like.
Let's hurry and vote on the motion.
Call the question.
Well, it smells like like a heater.
It's like the heater's on.
Or wiring on fire. My only comment back to
Sweet smoke.
To those just while we're investigating this is that we're not spending $20,000 on seasonal lighting. We've taken money for that for the 150 banners, and that left us short for the they're seasonal, right? But that's where almost not quite half, 8,000 roughly, went to that. So really, this, to me, seasonal meant sort of Christmas. So that's where it was early in the year, and we made that call. So we have already used this fund for different things in Sooke that are all very well received by the public, and I think look great everywhere. So I have no problem proceeding, and I think we are adding on, and I think just given the cost of things, we have to consider building up this budget a bit more for damages. I think we also, though, in terms of what Councillor Parkinson raised, I would like to see something come back to council on what would be involved in lighting these trees, the district one, the Legion one, and the one at the kiosk. I know that there's a lift involved, there's electricity, and there's lights, but just know what that is. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, sorry. There was talk about not lighting the tree at the Evergreen there because we have the one in the roundabout. So it was just keeping the other two. So that because that was on private property and that, I guess. Oh, okay. Right? So it would be just those two.
Okay.
One up front and the one up there.
That's fine. And then I think in future years we can continue to look at the entryway to Sooke. There's challenges in that area, and it's a tough one given where it is. We don't have electrical there and the like, but it is at the welcome part, and I don't want to always see that ignored. So that's something maybe obviously for future budget considerations. So I'll call the question on this one. Or Councillor Pearson as a final comment? Okay. You're voting. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Loggins and Councillor Ray opposed. Okay, thank you. So that'll good. Carrying on. I don't know if I'm just getting used to that smell or if it's actually.
It is strong. It smells like vapor smoke.
Yeah, it does. There's something going on with that monitor. I'd start with that one. Okay, so let's move on to 9.1, please. That is Lot A Fundraising Opportunity. Wood on property, Councillor Parkinson.
So through your worship, there was discussion about Lot A for the wood the trees that were just taken down from the property, and it was thought that it would be a great fundraising venture for a number of different groups within Sooke, and there were suggestions like maybe the food bank could sell it, the for the soccer field, for the cadets, so that they could be fundraising options for different community groups.
So this is where somebody licensed and insured would do the handling, and then groups. I think that's a great idea. My preference is that it go to youth organizations.
Well,
but it's open to discussion.
To carry on with that, Your Worship, I think that youth organizations are great, but I also think that it's great for the food bank also to have the opportunity to receive funding from that as well, especially seeing as it is Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. So, thank you.
Councillor Loggins, then Ray, Casper, and Pearson? No? Okay.
I like the idea. I'm just concerned about how we pick and choose who this goes to. I don't think that's appropriate for council to decide. And while it would be great to throw it at the food bank, do they have the capacity to do that? We can't just tell someone that they're going to take our wood and fundraise with it if they don't have the ability to do so. So I see a bit of conflict with this. It's not that I don't agree with it. Perhaps a better idea would be that we find a way to sell it as a council and then put that money into our not to the Christmas lights, but into our grant process and put a little ticky box on our grant application specifically for youth applications. That would be my preference.
Okay, Councillor Casper, then Pearson.
Well, the wood that's out there right now, it has a 1-year shelf life in its current state. If the wood is bucked up into rounds, that extends the life. If it's split, then it will dry out and then be a hardwood, which older does turn into a hardwood. Then I think the groups and organizations, and there's a list, they could all be contacted, and as a coordinating entity, we have the ability to put the offer out to these community groups whichever ones come forward to help participate in the disposition of the wood and the selling of the wood. There's a way to keep track of their involvement, and that's how any monies that are raised from the sale could then be proportionately given out, so there is no favoritism. You're not picking one over the other. It's based on their participation. There may be some groups that do not want to participate at all because there's too much work or they're too busy. So I think that gap and that bridge can be covered. But the main question is that I think we have to give instructions to the contractor, if I'm not mistaken, in a timely fashion as to where this wood could be taken so that these decisions can be worked out. And I'm inclined to think a place that's flat and dry, that's under our complete control, is the works yard, which has a large amount of space. And so, in my mind, that's where it could go. And then we can sort out, as long as somebody is licensed and qualified to handle a chainsaw, then whether it's a community association or another agency, then they could assist in being the coordinator. And there are some licensed fallers that do a lot of volunteer work that could also do something. This is not a make-work project for our staff. Our staff don't need to be burdened with this project at all. And so I think this is all about community involvement. And if we can just find a way, give direction to staff to give the authority for this wood to be hauled away. Because right now, if it sits there, it's going to rot. And that doesn't help anybody.
Okay, to our CEO, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And before I comment on that, I'd like to comment on the smell of smoke. And I think out of abundance of caution, if we can wrap this meeting up really quick, that would be great. We are currently getting in touch with our acting fire chief. Our fire chief is away this week, and we're going to get it investigated and looked at. But out of an abundance of caution, I think it's a responsible act for us to wrap this meeting up as soon as we're done this new business, if we can. With respect to the new business, I have been cautioned by our Director of Development Services that the longer this wood sits in the cord state it is, the liability to the district is that if children decide to play on it and somebody gets injured, I kid you not, or neighbors who are interested in this wood would just come in after hours and start bucking it up themselves, which again is a liability on the district's perspective. That we do incur some additional costs to get it transported down to our works yard where it can be safely locked up, would be a wise decision. I think, part of the things council may wish to consider is first come, first serve with all the service groups in Sooke, as one way of trying to tackle who gets what. There are 60 cords currently available, which is a lot of wood, and it's going to take quite some time to have it bucked up. So we, the district, could be buying ourselves some time, having the cords safely tucked away at our public works yard until council has another opportunity to consider the matter. And I think the transport cost would be about $2,500 additional to the contract. And we do, if we're going to transport it, we do have to get a tag from the provincial government, and we can certainly do that within a matter of 3 to 5 days and have it transported after that.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson, then Pearson.
I would like to move that we ask the contractor to take the wood down to our works yard.
And, okay, seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Pearson. Anything further, Councillor Parkinson?
No, that's
Councillor
good
Pearson,
for now.
then?
I don't know what I'm
Microphone? Can you turn that on?
Could we add on there that we put an ad in the local paper that the wood's available to service groups to come forward? That way, if you put a small ad in the Sooke Mirror or something, then that way everybody has an equal opportunity to approach the district. So, and it'll be available, and then they have to do the work and the selling and stuff like that. So.
Are we ready
Through
to
your
do
worship?
that? Like, are we ready to put an ad into the paper? Like, we move the wood and advertise it?
Advertise it to any interested.
Through you, Your Worship. Can we decide that at on the 2nd of October, what we plan to do with it? That we just get it moved from here and we can leave?
That's what I'd like to do.
I'm getting it.
Okay, so move all the wood to the publics and further discussion to occur on October 2nd.
Thank you, Your Worship. We also need permission from council to incur an additional $2,500 to get the wood transported down to our works yard.
Yeah,
it may come in cheaper than that, but out of an abundance of caution, if we can get approval for $2,500, that would be great.
I'm okay with adding that to the recommendation.
Okay, good. Good. Microphone, quick.
If I may, so that's the contractor that was awarded the contract to do the cutting, correct?
Yeah.
Fine.
Correct.
Over and done. Okay, good. All those in favor? Oppose? All right, and then a motion to adjourn, and then these next items will come to our next meeting. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Those motions carried. Thank you, members of the public.